Hello, a very good morning to you. Keir Starmer prepares to give his first conference speech as Prime Minister today.
The Labour leader will promise light at the end of the tunnel after Chancellor Rachel Reeves said there'll be no return to austerity under her watch.
So it will be a budget with real ambition, a budget to fix the foundations, a budget to deliver the change that we promised, a budget to rebuild Britain.
Well, with the black hole in public spending, the Prime Minister will pledge to crack down on benefit fraudsters. Heard it all before, have you? Is Starmer a broken record?
As a month's worth of rain falls in one day, schools and businesses in central and south England are left picking up the pieces.
From today, it becomes illegal to own zombie knives. GBNews talks to a campaigner who worries it doesn't go far enough.
It's an absolute waste of time because zombie swords are just a part of the fashion. Zombie swords aren't, or machetes aren't brainwashing kids. That's not the problem. That's not the root cause. It's just like this big illusion to make the government look to the public to look like they're doing something.
As more parents than ever admit to tracking their adult children, this morning we're asking whether it's controlling or caring.
Good news for Prince Harry. A judge rules his American visa application should remain private, despite him admitting to taking drugs in his memoir.
And in the sport this morning, Everton becomes the latest American-owned Premier League club. Manchester United's new ground could boost the economy by £7.3 billion. And Emma Raducanu is kind of getting like that kid at school that was always ill as she pulls out of the Chinese Open. Sorry, Emma.
During the past few days, we've seen some electrifying thunderstorms and torrential outbreaks of rain. Will today be any quieter for southern parts of the UK? Has the rain shifted further north? I'll have the full details in the forecast coming up shortly.
2 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock. A very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster and you're tuned in to GB News Breakfast.
So here's the thing. I was talking to a colleague today, and it appears in motorways, when you go down motorways and the gantries overhead give you speed, is that a recommended speed? Are they saying because of the weather conditions, the traffic conditions, whatever, you should go at 60 or 50 or whatever it
Well,
happens
turns
to be?
out it's binding, but some people mistakenly think that those can be voluntary. And given, you know, that the motorway is often completely empty
I thought it was
3
for
in the
guidance.
morning. Yeah, I thought it was guidance as well.
I didn't. When has there ever been guidance? I thought it was always, they tell you what to...
Yeah, well, I got flashed.
No, but are they not?
Oh, did you? Anyway,
I'm told that right now.
We're not saying who that person is.
Sorry, well,
anyway,
I just
back to the
admitted it.
motorways.
I thought it had to have a circle with a red line through it.
A red line through the circle, or red line round the outside?
Illegal, it has to have the speed limit and a circle with a red circle with a line.
It didn't have a red line through it, but it had a red line round it. But there was not a single other car on 6 lanes of traffic, a clear sky, no rain, and my speed limit was set on my cruise control to 70. So I thought I was safe, and I thought I was doing the right thing.
You know how to
I
work the
was
cruise
legal.
control? I've never known anybody that's used the cruise control.
Really?
No.
I use cruise control because then I don't break the speed limit.
Which is very easy. Is it any wonder all of us are walking around with 2 points for doing 2 miles an hour over something in a 20?
I haven't got 2 points.
I actually haven't got any
I
points.
haven't got any points. And I've never had any.
What's the...
No,
Are you okay, Paul?
I'm completely clear at the moment.
Yeah, well, it appears there's only one person in the...
No, I have to. I don't have any
Mr.
points.
Speedy
but I don't drive anymore. But if I did these days, it's hard
Why
to
do you
avoid
not
it
drive anymore?
because I don't like it. Everywhere is 20 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's hard.
And if you drive at 20 miles an hour, it
basically
feels
walking.
weird.
Yeah.
And if you go a slightly bit faster, you get points. I don't have any points. I do have to say I've always been very, very good like that.
Do you know,
but it's very easy these days.
Do you know what irritates me? People who do adhere to the 20 mile per hour limit. She's fine.
Eamonn, what you're saying, I don't have any points, I'm holier than thou. And then what annoys me is the people who do obey the law.
Yeah, well, there's bits you can speed up in between.
I
and you
see.
can do
Well, we
these
couldn't
things.
possibly
Use your brain for these
advocate
things.
This is not...
Theoretically,
Good evening, Mr Holmes. As you were. Oh, sorry. You won't be... I didn't know it was you.
Could there have been on said motorway this morning for a change of the speed limit? There wasn't an accident, there wasn't bad weather, there wasn't a single other car, and I was safe.
Right.
Well, one morning going into Sky News, my car might have been rushing it a little bit, and the police pulled me over. They stopped me. And I explained to them I had to be on doing the news at 6 o'clock, and as you know, I'm never late for anything. So he took his motorbike and he escorted me with his flashing light to Sky News.
I have a similar
Did you forget that
story.
treatment?
Well, on the way to Sky News, I got stopped for possibly going a little bit too fast once upon a time, and I had the audacity to say, really, is there nothing else that you could be doing at this time? Don't do that. Never say that to a police.
Oh, dear.
What are you doing?
And then he got cross with me, and then I backtracked, and I was extremely charming, and I said, sorry, I'm just trying to get to work, to do the news, because I'm actually never late. And I wasn't escorted, but don't do that.
OK.
Yes, sir. No, sir. That's the way to deal with it.
Today, Keir Starmer will be giving his keynote speech at the Labour Party conference. He's set to address his first as Prime Minister.
Yes, and he's going to try and strike a more positive note if he can, as he sets out his ambition to build a new Britain, urging tough decisions are only a short-term step, but they will lead to national renewal.
Now, it follows the Chancellor Rachel Reeves yesterday, whose address was interrupted by hecklers as she pledged to no return to austerity and defended the recent winter fuel payment cuts as a hard but a fair choice, she said.
There will be no return to austerity. And I made the choice to means test the winter fuel payment so that it's only targeted at those most in need. I know that not everyone in this hall or in the country will agree with every decision that I make. But I will not duck those decisions.
Also set to speak today is Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, as she announces a crackdown on crime.
Live from Liverpool, our political correspondent Catherine Forster this morning. Catherine, good morning.
Yes, good morning, both of you. It's been a rather strange conference in some ways here in Liverpool because, of course, it's 14 years since Labour were last the party of government. And last year at this conference, there was a mood of energy, of optimism. And here they are in power. But it's not going brilliantly. The last week or so, particularly overshadowed with rows about donations. We've had a lot of doom, a lot of gloom. At the conference, actually, it's rained pretty much solidly for 2 days, though it's stopped now. So they're desperately trying now to give us all a little bit of hope, basically, to paint a picture of optimism, saying that all these tough choices that they're going to have to take, the winter fuel allowance being just one of them, we expect there to be many more, come the budget at the end of October, that they're all for a purpose, that we're going to feel the benefits of it down the line. So we'll be hearing from the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, talking about cracking down on knife crime at 10 o'clock. The Prime Minister will be speaking at 2 o'clock, and he's going to say, basically, stick with us, there's light at the end of the tunnel. One of the things he's likely to say is, I know this country is exhausted by and with politics. I know that the cost of living crisis drew a veil over the joy and wonder in our lives, and that people want respite and relief. Now, of course, they're going to stress there's tough choices. Expect to hear a lot of pledges of a government of service. One thing that he will be announcing is a Hillsborough law. Now, of course, in this city, particularly when 97 Liverpool fans were crushed at that tragedy in Hillsborough, those people have fought for justice for decades. He made a promise to them that he would bring in a law. He's going to say he will do that by the next anniversary, a duty of candour that will basically promise criminal sanctions to officials or bodies who don't act correctly, who try to cover up or block right being done. I think that will bring heart to some people, because again and again we see these terrible sort of failures of state, Hillsborough, infected blood, the post office, etc. And these people fight for justice for many, many years, and in most cases they're still waiting, but trying to turn the page on this doom and gloom, trying to move on from the donations rows. Let's see how that goes.
Okay, we'll see how everything goes. Catherine, I know you're there all day for us, and we'll have full coverage of the conference throughout the programming here today on GB News.
Yeah, and you can watch the Prime Minister delivering that speech. That will be live, 2 p.m, and you can watch it on Good Afternoon Britain. I think the question will be really, you know, adding in this kind of note of optimism to his speech at the 11th hour. Will that work after the weeks and weeks of doom and gloom that he's been sort of putting out there? Is it possible to kind of move this train this freight train of doom that he's got under motion and
now pretend it isn't going to happen? No, but then they're all frauds. They're all frauds. They all talk nonsense, and they treat us like morons, as if we can't understand what's needed, what's not needed, or whatever. But one thing's for sure, if you earn over 40 grand a year, they'll hammer you. You'll be done. So that's that. That'd be my analysis of that.
I don't think you're probably wrong. We will find out in October with that budget as well. But will you find it optimistic? What are you looking for from the Prime Minister today? Let us know, gbnews.com/your say.
Let's talk about the flooding, the rainfall that's going on. Flash floods swept across the country yesterday. A lot of cars submerged, houses waterlogged with this one. Stormy weather continuing to pour. Should you be bracing yourself for more in the coming days? Well, you've already seen him on the programme this morning. Here to answer that question, Nathan Rao. Nathan,
good morning.
Very good to have you here. How would you describe what's going on at the moment?
I think it's safe to say that summer is over. Autumn officially arrived at the weekend. It showed its teeth. It is going to growl some more this week because there is more rain on the way. Some very, very heavy and unusual rainfall at the weekend due to some very intense thunderstorms. In fact, Woburn had more than twice the monthly amount of rainfall. That's up to 5 inches of rain at the weekend, leaving some very, very severe flooding. Really over central, southern, southeastern England have seen some very, very heavy rainfall. We're seeing some of the effects of it this morning. There were Met Office warnings in place last night, and there is more rain to come this week.
Where's it coming from? Is it coming from the west? Is it coming from the east? Or you know, so much of Europe was really deluged.
And Cannes yesterday as well, underwater in south of France. Some crazy weather going on in Europe.
Very good question. Now, at the weekend, it came from the south. There was what was called a supercell thunderstorm that blew up over the south, and that's a very, very intense thunderstorm holding a lot of rain that dropped a lot of rain in a very short amount of time. Now, the weather is going to change this week, or is it actually already changed? The jet stream is going to move south, and that is going to bring more storms in from the west in a more of a typical autumnal fashion. We usually see the jet stream move over the UK. That's that very fast ribbon of air, bringing those low-pressure systems. If you watch the weather forecast, you watch the Met Office, you're going to hear them start talking about low pressure, and that's what you don't want to hear at this time of year, because low pressure is storm systems coming in, and they are going to keep on coming through the week. A bit of a respite today, but on Wednesday, more low pressures coming in through the west. And it's slightly concerning because it's very, very early in the season. We've only just reached autumn. And this flooding that we're seeing now is sort of reminiscent of the 2012 winter floods, which came at the end of the season. We're already underwater now at the beginning of the storm season. So I'd expect more to come.
What I would absolutely dread is, I've never in my life been flooded, and I've been lucky enough to have bought homes that are not in flood areas, but just say you were in a flood area and you're just waiting for this to come to your door.
Yeah, and I was actually watching the news yesterday, and people were talking about their insurance, and actually their insurance hasn't covered the flood damage because there are clauses in their insurance that doesn't cover flood damage. I would expect that with the weather that we're anticipating, with the flooding that's already in place, that'd be something to look at, because even though you can't stop places flooding, you can mitigate the damage and you can prepare for it. This is what the Met Office are warning for with these warnings that they put out, and the Environment Agency, which has 80 flood alerts and 20 flood warnings in place, is to be prepared for flooding and be prepared to mitigate it, because we're seeing more and more of it. And as I mentioned, we're very, very early in the storm season to start to see parts of the country under this depth of water. So if you've got another 4 or 5 months of wet and windy weather to come, I would suspect that flooding is going to be an issue through the season.
Gosh. Are there any parts of the country that aren't being particularly badly affected? I asked because I think, obviously, we had that nice weather last week. The week before that, we had awful weather in the south. But it was during the Braemar Games, I think, and you could see the King up in Scotland, and it was glorious sunshine.
Lovely, yes.
And I think there was sunny yesterday in parts of Scotland as well, whilst the rest of us were underwater down here. So is it right across Britain?
Actually, that is going to flip. Now, up until now, the weather warnings have been in central England, southern England and southeastern England. That is going to go through a bit of a change, and the north is going to be in the firing line now for the rain to come. So through the rest of the week, that's where the bands of rain are going to come in further towards the north. The south of the country, which has had the rain so far, will get a bit of a respite today. But then as we go further into the week, and it's always very difficult to predict with these lows, and I've said this before to you guys, they bounce around and they go where they want to go, and it's quite hard to pin them down. So it looks like there will be a risk of heavy rain across the country, as I said, more towards the north through the middle of the end of the week. But anywhere could get further rainfall, and then it's turning colder.
OK. Great.
Now, you're going to be back after 7 o'clock, and we'll be taking people's opinions on what's happening to them. But what may we expect for the rest of the week?
Take your brollies with you and expect more rain.
OK, thanks very much, Ben. Cheers. Staying with the weather, let's now get the forecast for the day ahead. Aidan McGivern with that.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Following the very heavy rain that we've seen across some central and southern parts of the UK over the last few days, today is brighter and drier in the south. Still some showers around, but this time it's the turn of the north, specifically northern and eastern Scotland, where we'll see some wet weather during the next few hours. Persistent and at times heavy outbreaks of rain. Scattered showers for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, much of northern and central England as well as Wales, mostly dry to the south. Some areas of cloud around, but also a few glimmers of sunshine, so certainly drier and brighter compared with yesterday. Highs of 18 Celsius in the south. Colder further north, with a bit of a northerly wind setting in across Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England. And the showers tending to break up a lot more into the evening. Some late brightness arriving into the north of Scotland before the sun goes down. Likewise for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, a few gaps in the clouds, but plenty of showers around. And for northern and central England, parts of Wales, again, a few showers, but also some clear spells. Mostly dry for East Anglia and southern counties of England, after we've seen so much rain during the last few days. Heading into the evening, clearing skies for many, but there will be some areas of cloud floating about for the central belt into southern Scotland, parts of northern England. Some showers keep going here, likewise for northern Scotland. Where we've got the clear skies elsewhere, though, it's going to be a cool night with temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in the north, mild in the far south as it starts to turn cloudy for the start of Wednesday, and this area of rain begins to move in. Now, that's going to turn things wet by the afternoon across parts of the south and southwest, as well as eventually Northern Ireland. But ahead of that, some brightness remains across Scotland, northern and eastern England. Just some showers around, but it's again cold in the north, milder further south, and then very unsettled into Thursday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're going to take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom at 6:18 for you. And nearly 500 people were killed by Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon yesterday. It's marked the nation's deadliest day in decades. That's as Israel vows to do whatever is necessary to push Hezbollah away from its northern border with Lebanon. In a sign of escalation, the US has confirmed additional troops are being sent to the Middle East.
New laws have come into force today, banning protesters from gathering within 200 metres of abortion clinics in Scotland. The MSP who led the campaign, Gillian McKay, has hailed the move as a critical day for reproductive rights. Next month, safe zones will also become law around abortion clinics in England and Wales.
A judge has ruled Prince Harry's visa application should remain private after a lawsuit was brought to make it public. That's after the Duke of Sussex admitted to using drugs, including marijuana and cocaine, in his memoir Spare. Drug use must be disclosed in US visa applications and can lead to rejections.
The thing about today is this is the deadline for zombie knives. They are illegal from today. Why were they not illegal before this? We're going to be talking about that next.
The Britain I grew up was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth, available at gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The zombie knife ban comes into force today. They are officially illegal as the government strives to keep streets safe.
Yeah, well, that is after a period of amnesty where the knives could be handed into police stations without consequences. Our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper has more on this story.
These are a couple of zombie knives that have been handed in at Blackpool. So what you've got here is a blade that is over 8 inches long. It has a point, it has 2 serrated edges, and it has holes cut into it as well. Obviously, this then makes it a zombie knife.
As of today, owning one of these weapons could land you in prison. A new law has been passed which now makes it illegal to own, make or sell a zombie-style knife or machete.
These weapons are viewed as being a status sort of symbol. Hopefully it'll have a massive impact on the community that these weapons won't be around. People won't see them, they won't be intimidated by them. Hopefully we won't have any more tragedies related to these weapons.
But someone who's already experienced tragedy at the hands of knife crime is Byron Heighton. 10 years ago, his brother John Joe was brutally murdered in a knife attack.
Looking like this, guess who their target audience is?
Now, Byron travels the country, sharing his story and teaching schoolchildren about the dangers of knives. To him, this new law doesn't go far enough.
It's a waste of time. It's an absolute waste of time because zombie swords are just a part of the fashion. Zombie swords aren't, or machetes aren't brainwashing kids. That's not the problem. That's not the root cause. It's just like this big illusion to make the government look to the public to look like they're doing something.
For Byron, he says music genres such as drill and grime, as well as the culture they create, are what's really to blame for the knife crime epidemic.
When you look into what they're listening to and who they're following, they're all rapping the same, talking the same, acting the same, and it all comes from music. When we're on about banning zombie swords and that, I'm just like, this is totally wrong, because kids will just pick up another knife. The actual problem is that when these kids have been brainwashed so much, this is how they're living their life.
At Blackburn Royal Hospital, they treat young knife crime victims on a regular basis. They even have specialist members of staff who work with them to help get their lives back on track.
So we had a young adult who came through our A&E department, and he had been the victim of a machete attack, and he had a fractured skull. So we sat with him in the department. After he was discharged, we stayed in contact. I went to all of his hospital appointments with him, worked with him with housing because he was put in emergency housing for his own safety. Took him a food parcel one day. You know, there's nothing that we won't do. We're there to support that patient, really.
Going forward, it's hoped that this new law will reduce the number of knife crime victims treated by our hospitals and the number of families like Byron's who have to grieve the loss of a loved one. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Will anything change? We do hope
so.
Right, still plenty of time to grab a chance to win an incredible
£36,000 in the Great British Giveaway. And as you should know by now, that means £3,000 a month, tax-free for a whole year.
On demand. Good luck.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Johnny Ratner. The M62 in West Yorkshire is down to a single lane westbound. Everybody's been funnelled into the inside lane on that three-lane stretch. Junction 26, past the scene of a collision at the Chain Bar interchange south of Bradford. In Suffolk, northeast of Newmarket, the A11 northbound closed at the Red Lodge turnoff for a police investigation. And various roads remain closed because of flooding, including the A421 south of Bedford, the A5 northbound through Milton Keynes off the Abbey Hill roundabout, and to the east of Chippenham in Wiltshire, the A4 remains closed in Derry Hill and Cairn. On London Underground, the Piccadilly line remains suspended in Acton Town and Hammersmith due to a late finishing of engineering works at Turnham Green, which means they also are suffering with severe delays from Earls Court to Ealing Broadway and Richmond. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Cup Classique, previously known as Méthode Cup Classique, is South Africa's answer to the famous French fizz.
They basically have to be made in South Africa and also by the traditional method. So it's exactly the same method as champagne, but is it made in a different place. So they can't call it champagne because it's not made in Champagne, but it's very similar.
And on the other hand, in Prosecco, it all happens in a sort of great vat.
Yes,
doesn't it?
Yes.
Which is why Prosecco tastes different from other sparkling wines.
Prosecco will taste much more fruity because you don't have the thing called lees aging. Insert the wine with brioche, biscuity, toasty flavours and aromas, which makes it much more complex.
Here we've got a thing called Journey's End.
Yes.
And would you like to tell us, I've said that people didn't want to splash out on champers. They might want to go the Cap Classique route.
Yes.
What would they be saving? How much might that cost in a shop?
So this one here will cost you about £17. So it is considerably, I guess, better value for money than champagne.
But I'd also comment that it's probably a good deal cheaper than English sparkling wine, which is interesting.
Yes, that is correct.
Now, the second one is called Kleiner Salzer.
It is, yes.
And you told me this is a little more expensive than the first one.
It is.
What price were we talking about here?
About 20.
About 20.
Yes.
Not vastly more.
No.
Are we going to taste £3 worth of improvement? Oh, and by the way, it went so beautifully with the cheese, just as you advised. Are South African sparkling wines, Cup Classique, are they pretty well available in English wine shops, British wine shops.
They are, yes. You can find them in all of the supermarkets. Growing Beck, and that's on offer at the moment, actually. That's $11.99 from Waitrose, which is exceptional value.
That is insane.
Yes, it is. And you can also, so I bought with me today, so this is a Pinot Noir only, so that's a rosé sparkling.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Let's get up to date with what's happening sports-wise. It's 6:30. Paul, with that.
Bit of sports business, really.
Okay.
Yeah. Everton have been bought by the new American owners, the Friedkin Group, who own Roma in Italy. It's American billionaire. His name's Dan Friedkin, and he's a billionaire. By the way, do you know how much a billion is? How many million?
100 million?
It's 1,000 million.
1,000 million.
I never knew what a billion truly was.
It's a lot.
It's a ridiculous amount of money. But what he's actually spending on Everton, it's not clear exactly how much he's spending. We're thinking around 500 million, but more American owners, basically in the Premier League, says we're pleased to have reached an agreement to become custodians of this iconic football club. At least it's not a soccer club.
British owners of the big Premier clubs anymore?
Well, there's still Daniel Levy, and I guess at Spurs, and who's the major shareholder. Who else is there? There's still a few around, but it's America is looking over, and of course Saudi, and we're looking at the Middle East and thinking, well, let's dive in there and have some of that. Controlling stake in Roma, so it's 94.1% stake in Everton, and Farhad Moshiri, who's the outgoing, because the thing is, I know you asked me earlier, they thought it was American owners before, but there was a company called 777 that tried to buy it, and then that fell by the wayside. There's a lot of frustrated Everton fans, but the last chairman has spent a fortune. But, you know, however anybody complains, oh, this is terrible, and they're not looking after our football club, they did spend a load of money, it's just how wisely the money's spent. So maybe this new group will come in and try and revive Everton's fortunes, because they're bottom at the moment.
Well, I think Isabel hit it on the head. The more British clubs aren't owned by people in Britain, I think it's bad for all of us. They do.
Yeah, there you
Especially with Americans sticking their nose
But then
you got Jim Ratcliffe,
lead it into the next story, because you see what it does for the economy when clubs are thriving, when they've got new grounds. And
why do we care?
Because, well...
why do I care? I don't care about the economy. I care about whether my team's going to get 3 points or not.
Oh, well, different hats on, but you care about the economy because the economy's doing well.
I don't care about the economy.
Then taxes get lower,
I don't care
and
about
the
the economy.
Treasury
I care about Manchester United, who owns them, where they're going to.
But
people who support Everton will just care about Everton. They don't give a rat's ass about the economy.
But if it kind of helps, you know, if they're saying, if you're a bit of Manchester United fan...
you go to a match on a Saturday and you think, this is good for the economy.
No.
Good.
Especially in that face. But the thing is that of course it helps. And this is why what they're trying to do is say to those non-football fans and the non-Manchester United fans, yes, all this money's been spent, and look how good it is. £7.3 billion boost. I don't want to sound like an economist, which is something I would never sound like in a million years. But have you seen what the new stadium, they're calling it New Trafford. This is what they're saying it will be called, for obvious reasons.
Well, they're going to need public money for this as well.
Well, surely not.
Oh, they do need public money, because if they redevelop the way they want to, they have to close down a railway hub as well. They'd have to relocate that to Merseyside. There's 17,000 social houses being placed in this as well.
92,000 jobs. How does that work?
Of course they need government money.
92,000. Well, look, have you seen the model?
No, let's have a look.
I'm not impressed by this. What the heck?
Dear, what's that?
What on earth? I mean, there's more work that seems to have gone in to the houses around the outside. Is it a lump of jelly with a bit of green in the middle?
That's not a drawing. That's a photograph, isn't it? Of a papier-mâché model.
It's like, well, there you go. Someone said it was like a toilet roll.
So
is it a donut?
It looks like a Krispy Kreme.
That's not the existing site, is it?
No, that'll be the new site.
And will that be far away from Old Trafford?
No, just down the road.
In the car park?
Just down the road. Although there's words... it's been said that maybe Old Trafford will be kept. There's obviously the iconic stadium. But it is needed, though, isn't it, Eamonn? I mean, it's either you invest a huge amount of money in Old Trafford, which needs the work, or build the new stadium. How would you feel about that? Because a lot of fans are unhappy when stadiums move. A lot of us have been through it, but when you've got a new, huge £2 billion stadium...
You've got to accept that lack of investment has meant that the stadium's falling well behind what's required, so something needs to be done. But one would hope that it's in the same area.
Oh, it is, yeah, it's a stone's throw away. But how do you feel about the Krispy Kreme donut? Which what maybe it could be called.
Could be sponsored by it.
Couldn't it?
I could see the deal there.
There you go. There's plenty of money coming in there.
Social housing.
Yes, the Krispy Kreme Donut Stadium. There we are.
Oh, nailed it.
He's not happy about that. Carabao Cup tonight. Chelsea play Barrow. Barrow, who the manager is Stephen Clements there, Ray Clements' son, in League Two, so good luck to them. Man City versus Watford, Walsall versus Leicester, Wycombe versus Aston Villa. Wimbledon were supposed to play Newcastle tonight, but did you see what happened to the stadium?
Sand.
That's right. It's like a sinkhole. Look, we've got something of this here. This is through all the rain yesterday.
This was after flooding.
Yeah, this is after the flooding, and then all the rain's come down. Wait, there we are. Have a look at that. Now, it looks like a bunker at a golf course.
What, a little bit of ground has just collapsed there.
Yeah, the whole thing's just collapsed.
If that happens in the middle of a football pitch in our cities, what's happening underneath these skyscrapers?
Oh, don't say that.
Well, sinkholes is something you associate with America and...
I know.
Where they have big weather, but with this crazy, as Nathan was saying, it's early in the season for this weather. Anyway, doom and gloom.
Can you imagine? I know, you've really put a downer on that. Can you imagine if that happened actually while the game was going on?
Yeah.
I know.
That's a whole other story.
It really
Paul,
is.
thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Still to come, Tesco has been accused of skimping on chicken nuggets.
Whatever next. Whatever next. Hold the front page.
If you've got a story to tell about your nuggets, let us know after this.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
What prompted you to go on your incredible journey?
Well, I was fighting my own demons at the time, before I started the walk, and it had been a long journey, if you like. And, I knew that I needed to make a change, and my daughter had just flown the nest. I was a single parent before this, and previous to that, I was ex-parachute regiment. And I knew that I needed to make a change, because if I didn't, I'm not sure where I would have been now, if that makes sense. So, yeah, something just came into my head at the very end of July and said, look, go and walk the UK coastline. And that's exactly what I did. And 6 years later, we've just finished.
You met your missus on the journey as well, didn't you? So truly, Chris, a transformative journey for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, you step into the unknown like that, you have no idea how things are going to work out. You go out with so little expectation, but only really with the aim to, for me personally, to come back feeling a lot better than what I was before I left. And that certainly succeeded. So everything that happened along that journey was one big learning curve. And I got to learn a lot about myself, a lot about, the public and people. And it was just a life-changing transformation for me. And, I learned so much, and I know what I want to do with the rest of my life as a result of it. And I met the most amazing people. And, I worked hard. 6 years of carrying your house on your back isn't the easiest feat in the world, I can promise you that, but it was worth every single step because, I rescued a dog along the way. I met my now fiancée, Kate Barron, along the way, and we had a baby together along the way as well. So to start in the position that I did and then end up with all of that coming over the line with me was just something that I never expected, and I couldn't have dreamed it up, to be honest.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 6:39. Should we take a look at some of the front pages on this Tuesday morning? The Daily Mail leading with RMT boss Mick Lynch saying we will seize control of the UK economy. Telegraph reports on the Prime Minister assuring us there is hope for a prosperous future despite current economic challenges. The Express is leading with Labour facing criticism for postponing a vote on the potential removal of winter fuel payments for pensioners. Here's the Times. It opens with Labour's latest promise to crack down on benefit fraudsters. I mean, if in doubt, let's just attack the benefit fraudsters. Why do they never get any of these benefit fraudsters? Well, this is true. And The Guardian is leading with the Prime Minister seeking to lift the public mood ahead of his conference speech this afternoon. Well, honestly, it just makes me that benefit fraudsters thing. You just hear it every year. It's a bit similar to the people who are tax avoiders. Those are the two go-tos. We've got no other ideas. We'll go after those people who avoid paying tax and the benefit scroungers. Well, if we actually did that successfully, we'd have done that a long time ago. Yes. It was that easy. It's always one to pull out of the hat. Claire Muldoon is here with us this morning, and Theo Usherwood. Very nice to see you both. Thank you, you too. What do you make of them going for benefit fraudsters? Anybody got a view on that?
Well, they need to raise some extra money, and they're thinking they can get £1.6 billion out of it by going after benefit fraudsters. And they're looking to go in. They're looking to give the Department of Work and Pensions the same rights as HMRC to go into people's bank accounts and to look and to get. Do you know what the problem with that is? They've got nobody working for that department or the tax department or all these places that they're going to get this money from, and they've suddenly realised they've got no staff to actually do it. Well, yes, we heard from Rachel Reeves yesterday that she's not going. We're not going to have austerity 2.0, following on from, of course, Cameron and Osborne back in 2010. That she doesn't want, hinting more towards tax rises than spending cuts. But they want the government is trying to, it needs to find more money, and it needs to fill this £22 billion black hole that, of course, is disputed, but when it comes to the inheritance from the Conservative Party. And one of the ways that they're doing this, and I think there is a feeling also that if you look back to the election campaign, that actually Labour didn't necessarily put forward a plan when it came to welfare. And you listen to what the Conservatives were saying, and they were talking about, bringing in experts to decide whether you were fit to work rather than just leaving it to your GP. The fact that you had to find a job after 12 months, and that Labour didn't have they didn't have a similar plan. And I think what they're looking when we'll hear obviously from what Keir Starmer has to say later, but when you look at this particular idea, I think they're trying to fill that gap from their manifesto back before.
It always gives the impression. It always makes me think, there'll be some scrounger in the street who's scratching himself, and he's out
watching daytime TV,
cleaning cars and whatever during the day, and he's claiming his income as well, benefit fraud. I don't believe it exists on the scale that they're talking about.
I don't believe it does either. And I'll tell you something else. I think when the Conservatives tried to crack down on benefit fraud, the left were saying, oh, my goodness me, you're affecting the most vulnerable in society. You can't do that. Again, it's hypocrisy we're seeing from this current regime. Utter hypocrisy.
But is this because Rachel Reeves yesterday, again, trying to paint herself almost a bit as a Margaret Thatcher, this Iron Lady, and saying we're not going to tax workers, so we're in this budget, they're looking at everyone else that they can, squeeze, whether that's pensioners, whether that's special education.
No. If you earn any sort of decent salary, you're not regarded as a worker. That's the whole thing.
You're not the hard-working family.
You'll not be regarded as a hard-working person at all.
But I don't think they know what a hard-working family is. I don't think they can identify. I mean, she was banging on yesterday about change. She said that they're the party for change. They're the party for the worker. They don't understand.
Well, I was just reading in the paper this morning, Keir Starmer's just paid off his mortgage last Monday.
Exactly. £2 million house.
But whilst in opposition, he'd been accusing Rishi Sunak of being out of touch with ordinary people who were seeing mortgage rises. They're all a political elite. That's
it's
just
the
a
hypocrisy.
Fact of life.
But I have to say, I think the fronts of the papers now at least are getting more optimistic. At least we're seeing a myriad of stories
let's see
now.
how long that lasts.
Exactly. It is for today.
Well, you talk about light at the end of the tunnel here. This is the front page of the Telegraph, which is exactly those words. So he's expected Theo to tell us all today things are going to get better after telling us that things weren't going to get better. But
yes, I think there's a danger, and this is something I remember Andy Haldane, who's the former chief economist at the Bank of England, was saying a few weeks back, was that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're always talking the country down, if you're always talking about the doom and the gloom and the fact that there's going to be a painful budget to come, that actually what that does is it has the net effect of people feeling much more cautious about whether they're going to go to the shops, much more cautious about their own personal spending, and then of course that then trips into
Jeremy Hunt yesterday saying that. He said business confidence is vanishing under the government.
And at the same time, you've got a lot of noises off from businesses worried about this new deal for workers, where we could see further, introduction of restrictions which will make it harder for businesses, make them more cautious about taking on workers, taking on new employees, new staff. And I think that's potentially problematic. And I think what Keir Starmer is going to try to do in his speech today is to set out a much more positive vision to try and instill a bit more confidence.
Do you know what the Gen Zs would call that? Manifesting, wouldn't they? They would say they're manifesting it all.
Yes.
And there's no doom and gloom with Muldoon, so let's get that in the headlines.
OK, well, where do you stand on the unions? The Mail, their front page says, we will seize control of the UK economy. What do you think now of the new position the unions find themselves in?
Well, they present in a very, very strong position. It's more like the government of Harold Wilson than Tony Blair, isn't it, at the moment? And Mick Lynch, of course he's going to say that, isn't he? It's almost as if he's manifesting now too. Next he'll be having an oat milk latte. But there's good things in this as well. I mean, I like the abolition of zero-hour contracts. I think they do no good at all to families. They do no good to society. You cannot build a family on a zero-hour contract. You cannot build society on a zero-hour contract. Fine for the students, not for parents, OK, especially. But they do have claws of steel into the government. I mean, yesterday as well, the optic for Rachel Reeves, the first female Chancellor of the Exchequer. I mean, has she not known what politics has been like before? They've had very powerful women in politics. But then she also said that we're going to crack down on this and we're going to do that. And I just think, really, I don't know what you think you can do. And then the nurses then, just after that speech, they've rejected the 5.5%. So I really think the optic is not good. I think the unions are too powerful. They're going to gain more power. Because it is a weak government.
I think it was interesting that the vote was delayed yesterday on trying to reverse this winter fuel payments thing. Obviously non-binding, but a big embarrassment for Keir Starmer, who's obviously giving his speech today. If it had gone ahead yesterday, it's now going to happen when he's safely over in New York for the UN General Assembly. The fact that that was moved, though, goes to show that, yes, they are in bed with Labour. Of course, the unions are.
Yes.
But actually, they don't perhaps wield as much power as they are pretending. Because they would have had that vote
Why
yesterday.
is everybody so anti-union? I don't really understand this at all. It's not a good thing.
I'm not anti-union. I'm saying...
But I don't think anyone is. Newspapers will come out and make it all anti-union. I mean, the unions are there for workers' power and workers' rights and the weak and the oppressed and...
Exactly, which isn't always in national interest, though, because when you talk about pay disputes, you look at this black hole.
You're great talking about the economy and the national interest.
I'm trying to explain. Well, yeah, but that's the difference between the union and the Labour Party. That's the tension, isn't it? That they're supposed to be, doing things for the good of the country, whereas the modus operandi for a union is for the individual worker. And things aren't always...
No, but also under this regime, they actually they'll kill small and medium businesses. They will. SME, small, medium enterprises.
Who's going to kill those?
The unions will, because they'll be nigh on impossible to get a decent workforce coming in. We've got other stories here saying that Gen Zs don't want to be managers. They've got the quietness. They don't want to, bring their...
Conscious unbossing, I was reading this morning.
But
and I don't think
governments
unions will
are very
help
good
that.
at killing small and medium businesses with bureaucracy and tax.
Well, we're looking at what the proposals are from Andrew Gwynn, the Public Health Minister, when it comes to pubs, small and medium businesses. And there were 18 pubs a week closed last year, and now they're looking at potentially restricting hours. I think there is a recognition, and just from Wes Streeting previously, because I know they're also looking at banning the smoking in pub gardens and restaurants. And he did seem he seemed to be striking a note of caution a few weeks ago when he talked about a national conversation when it comes to that particular aspect of banning smoking in outdoor spaces.
Tell us more about this, Theo, because this is the front page of the Telegraph as well, and they're saying that pubs could be forced to close doors early under measures to target harmful drinking. Now, you're right, the big report yesterday about the taxation on pubs and the amount of pubs, 60 a month or whatever, closing down, absolutely horrendous. How's this going to help that situation?
So this is, from the story that's appeared today, this is coming from Chris Whitty, who's the Chief Medical Officer advising the government, and he's saying that at the moment the NHS is dealing with 40% of its output is dealing with preventable diseases. That could go up to 60%. So we're going to see a huge drive from this government as part of the NHS reforms to get a handle on diseases that could be prevented, things like heart disease, so that people don't end up in hospital and they deal with it outside. And that's going to mean restrictions, and this is what Andrew Gwynn's saying, on pubs, so we spend less time drinking.
It's a really interesting talking point, and I sort of put it out to the audience this morning because we're now accepting, aren't we, that smoking as society, kind of most people say smoking's bad for you, and it's probably less commonplace. We're certainly seeing a generation of youngsters, admittedly all vaping, but smoking's on its way out, really. People are a bit more reticent to give up drinking, in my experience. I don't know what you think, but people don't want to be told that it's bad for them.
Are they getting the evils of drink from pubs? Or it's what they do themselves, going to the off-licence and drinking at home and whatever. I suspect that pubs are not the biggest problem.
They're not.
There's also a huge community aspect to pubs. People go to pubs, they bring people together, and it's not, most pubs now serve food, and they are a place where you can actually meet people in person.
Which is a great thing.
Yes, rather than Zoom.
Absolutely.
Can we talk about Prince Harry? I don't know if you saw him yesterday at the Diana Awards in New York.
I didn't.
I just saw it pop up on my laptop on the PA sort of notifications that he was really twitchy and edgy and...
It's because he's not got Meghan by his side.
He looked really uncomfortable. Anyway, he's been talking about mental health and its links to mental fitness. I did actually wonder yesterday if he was OK.
Well, I don't think... Well... We can't, but it's all subjection, isn't it? But he says, call it mental fitness, says Prince Harry, instead of mental health. And I think the reframing of it, I don't think will be helpful because it will minimise anyone with a serious mental health condition. It's all very well saying to the youngsters, sit down, how are you feeling, this, that and the next thing, but people with extreme mental health issues are not going to be made better by the reframing of the term mental fitness. I think it can be a two-pronged attack. I think we can do things to improve our mental health fitness, and by making it bigger and better and fitter, there are certain things we can do. But, to come up there, stand up there and say, no.
OK, Theo, tell us about the fitness of Tesco's chicken nuggets and what is the issue here?
So this is, yes, the issue here is that Tesco is obviously facing, and this is, these are competition price wars between the supermarkets, and they've been accused of skimping on their ingredients and their products when it comes in order to price match Aldi. I've been to Aldi. I'm astonished every time I go to Aldi how cheap it is and how good it is. And I'm not just. I'm sorry. Nobody's paid for me to have a free lunch. But other supermarkets are available. But you go there and it's like, my wife introduced me to it. And it was like literally they're the same products, and that's of course putting pressure on other supermarkets, which of course do sterling work, and I'm sure hugely important. But it just shows, when I was growing up, Tesco, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, they were the big supermarkets, and now, of course, we've got these, whether it's Aldi or Lidl, these challenger ones.
So what's happened to the Tesco chicken nugget?
Well, they're trying to meet the challenge, but they're dumbing down their quality.
Its quality has to go, doesn't it? If you're going to go on the price,
to Turkey Twizzlers, then.
Well, we see it with milk. The supermarket wars to provide cheap milk, then they don't pay the farmers. There's always.
Well, that's the point.
That's the point. Two losers out in all this, guys. We've got to put the brakes on there. We'll see you again in 40 minutes' time. For the moment, thank you very much indeed.
Lots of people will be twitchy about the rain today. Is there more on the way? Aidan McGibbon with your forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Following the very heavy rain that we've seen across some central and southern parts of the UK over the last few days, today is brighter and drier in the south. Still some showers around, but this time it's the turn of the north, specifically northern and eastern Scotland, where we'll see some wet weather during the next few hours. Persistent and at times heavy outbreaks of rain. Scattered showers for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, much of northern and central England as well as Wales, mostly dry to the south. Some areas of cloud around, but also a few glimmers of sunshine, so certainly drier and brighter compared with yesterday. Highs of 18 Celsius in the south. Colder further north, with a bit of a northerly wind setting in across Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England. And the showers tending to break up a lot more into the evening. Some late brightness arriving into the north of Scotland before the sun goes down. Likewise for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, a few gaps in the clouds, but plenty of showers around. And for northern and central England, parts of Wales, again, a few showers, but also some clear spells. Mostly dry for East Anglia and southern counties of England, after we've seen so much rain during the last few days. Heading into the evening, clearing skies for many, but there will be some areas of cloud floating about for the central belt into southern Scotland, parts of northern England. Some showers keep going here, likewise for northern Scotland. Where we've got the clear skies elsewhere, though, it's going to be a cool night with temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in the north, mild in the far south as it starts to turn cloudy for the start of Wednesday, and this area of rain begins to move in. Now, that's going to turn things wet by the afternoon across parts of the south and southwest, as well as eventually Northern Ireland. But ahead of that, some brightness remains across Scotland, northern and eastern England. Just some showers around, but it's again cold in the north, milder further south, and then very unsettled into Thursday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Johnny Ratner. Various roads remain closed because of the flooding, particularly in Buckinghamshire. The A5 northbound shut through Milton Keynes from the Portway roundabout up to the Abbey Hill roundabout, and the A422 closed between the Chichilli roundabout and the North Crawley turn-off, so this is just to the north of Milton Keynes, of course. And south of Bedford, the A421 shut because of the flooding. And in Oxfordshire, west of Tame, the A418 remains shut. Accident investigation work is taking place near Tiddington following a serious collision yesterday morning. On the Essex stretch of the M25, the clockwise exit is closed to junction 29. The A127 exit, a car is on fire. And in Hampshire, at Romsey, Great Bridge Road, blocked after lorries got stuck on the railway bridge. Trains are suspended between Basingstoke and Southampton Central following a points failure. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good morning. Sir Keir Starmer is preparing to give his first conference speech as Prime Minister.
He will promise light at the end of the tunnel after the Chancellor Rachel Reeves said there will be no return to austerity.
So it will be a budget with real ambition, a budget to fix the foundations, a budget to deliver the change that we promised, a budget to rebuild Britain.
Well, with that £22 billion black hole in public spending, the Prime Minister will pledge to crack down on benefit fraudsters. But have we heard it all before? Is Starmer a broken record?
as a month's worth of rain falls in just one day. Schools and businesses in central and south England are left picking up the pieces.
From today, it becomes illegal to own zombie knives or machetes. GB News talks to a campaigner who worries it doesn't go far enough.
It's an absolute waste of time because zombie swords are just a part of the fashion. Zombie swords aren't, or machetes aren't brainwashing kids. That's not the problem. That's not the root cause. It's just like this big illusion to make the government look to the public to look like they're doing something.
This is an interesting one. More parents than ever are admitting to tracking their grown-up children. This morning we're asking whether that is controlling or caring.
It's good news for Prince Harry, as a judge has ruled that his American visa application should remain private, despite his admission to taking drugs in his memoir, Spare.
And in the sport this morning, Ian Wright brands Erling Haaland a coward after throwing the ball at Gabriel's head on Sunday. Everton have a new owner, and he's American, and he already owns Roma, and he's very rich indeed. And poor Emma Raducanu is injured again, so won't be playing in the China Open.
During the past few days, we've seen some electrifying thunderstorms and torrential outbreaks of rain. Will today be any quieter for southern parts of the UK? Has the rain shifted further north? I'll have the full details in the forecast coming up shortly.
Hello there, very good morning to you on this Tuesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and you're tuned in to GB News Breakfast. See that tracking your grown-up children thing, controlling or caring? I know people who do it to their pets. AirTags on their pets.
Yeah, but that's different. You can do it to your pets. You can't talk or reason with your pet, really.
Yeah, but you can lose your pet.
You can lose your pet.
That's why you do that.
You can lose your adult kids, can't you?
But my wife has been doing it with Ruby
Right, don't
since
tell her.
she's been at university.
Yeah.
So it's a week.
Yeah.
Me and my son had a look to see how
Where she
much
is.
time she'd been looking at where Ruby is. And in the past week, it was over an hour's worth of just checking to see where she is.
You see, and is it controlling or caring?
But do you know what else?
It's caring.
My mum...
Here we go, tracks you.
Mum, I know what's going on. My mum's tracking me.
That's
I get a call saying, "Oh, you left work early."
Paul, can I just say something, please? Can you not please give my mother ideas of anything of that sort, please? Because she doesn't know that things like that exist, actually.
Yeah, I think it's quite normal in this day and age. If you've got the text,
It's weird. 20-year-old, you're tracking
it's
a 20-year-old.
It's not that you're tracking them. It's just that you've got this tech, and you can, if you're worried about them, then you can have a look.
Can Ruby not switch your wife off?
She can, but you look at it and go, how comes? So what do you do?
I was at a party the other week, and I was with two parents with adult children, and their daughter, she's 18, but their phone was telling them that she was in the middle of a river. They were in a complete state. Where's our daughter? What's she doing? She was just drinking under a bridge.
Oh, my goodness.
So, it can lead to false alarms. But,
I'm not going anywhere near a bridge. I know my mum's going to do again. There'll be calls from my mum.
Right, we're going to be debating that about 7:20 this morning. Light at the end of the tunnel? Well, Keir Starmer thinks so. He set to address his party in his first conference speech as Prime Minister at, is it 2 o'clock this afternoon?
2 o'clock this afternoon. Well, in this speech, he's going to try to strike a more positive note, which is something he hasn't done in the last 11 weeks of his premiership, and his ambition to build a new Britain, urging tough decisions and a short-term step to national renewal.
Now, this follows the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, whose address was interrupted yesterday by hecklers as she pledged no return to austerity and defended the recent winter fuel payment cuts as a hard but fair choice.
There will be no return to austerity. And I made the choice to means test the winter fuel payment so that it is only targeted at those most in need. I know that not everyone in this hall or in the country will agree with every decision that I make. But I will not duck those decisions.
Well, also set to speak today is Home Secretary Yvette Cooper as she announces a crackdown on crime. Let's speak to our political correspondent who is live from Liverpool, from the conference for us this morning, Catherine Forster. Good morning to you, Catherine. I'm just going to read this GB News Your Say comment out as sort of the question to you, because it caught my eye. Andy M has just got in touch saying, there's light at the end of the tunnel, so says Starmer. Is this a pair of rose-tinted Lord Alley glasses? So the comments are coming in on that. But, you know, is he going to be able to strike a different note in the wake of all of these controversies?
Well, I think it's going to be difficult because since Labour got this huge majority, we've had a lot of doom and gloom, haven't we? Saying that Britain is broken, how hard things are going to be, £22 billion black hole, and so on and so forth. I think there's an acknowledgement now that they've really overdone that a bit, because we've seen that their approval ratings are falling through the floor. You know, we used to hear lots of talk of a decade of national renewal. I've talked to some MPs now who are not even sure that they're going to win the next election. And of course, they won. But a lot of the seats they hold by very narrow margins. So the mood is much more subdued here than you would perhaps expect after this big victory. It hasn't helped that it's rained pretty much solidly for 2 days, though it's finally stopped. So, yes, we've had all the rows about donations, which are still ongoing. There seems to be new stories emerging pretty much every day. We've had huge unhappiness about the cuts to the winter fuel allowance. Rachel Reeves is clearly not budging on that. There were pensioners protesting in the rain yesterday. The unions, Unite particularly, are deeply, deeply unhappy about that. They've got a vote on that, which was originally to be held yesterday, which has now been moved to Wednesday, just before conference closes, which they're furious about, frankly, because they feel that it's just been sort of given the graveyard slot, and there's a lot of unhappiness. So they will attempt today, as Rachel Reeves did yesterday, to strike a different tone, to give us a bit of hope, to promise light at the end of the tunnel, a little bit of optimism. So we expect that the Prime Minister will talk of a shared struggle, but will say they're building a new Britain, talk about a government of service, basically saying, look, times are hard, but we've got to make the tough choices now. It will be worth it for us all down the line. A few specific announcements. We were expecting a crackdown on benefit fraud and potentially giving fraud investigators access to information in people's bank accounts, and to crack down on sort of gangs engaged in benefit fraud, because the working age benefits bill has gone through the roof since the pandemic. A Hillsborough law promising a duty of candour, very appropriate that that's being announced in Liverpool, given what happened back in the late 80s in Hillsborough Stadium, that tragedy. And also a pledge to be training more British workers to fill vacancies rather than relying on cheap foreign labour. Now, that's something that we've heard over and over again over many years, haven't we? I mean, Gordon Brown in the last Labour government used to talk about British jobs for British workers. So an attempt to reset the mood, get back on track, move on from all the various rows. But the mood here is nothing like as upbeat and confident as you might have expected.
Catherine, thank you very much indeed. Full coverage of what's going on of the conference throughout the day and night here on GB News.
Yeah, and you can watch, of course, the Prime Minister's speech at 2 o'clock live on the channel during Good Afternoon Britain.
Now, let's get into this rain situation and the flash floods sweeping across the country yesterday. Nathan Rao joins us in the studio, the weather journalist, on all of this. Nathan, people are going to come up with a lot of theories for this one. It's different. It's not normal for this time of the year. is this climate change we're talking about?
Yeah, very interesting question. First of all, it's not really normal for this time of year. If we take last year and the number of storms we had 12 named storms in the storm season, which is a lot. And already at the start of this autumn, the autumn equinox was on Saturday. That's when the Earth, the northern hemisphere, tilts away from the sun at the beginning of autumn. We are already seeing swathes of the country under feet of floodwater. Now, we are the UK, we do get rain, we do get a lot of rain, but we are starting to see a pattern of more extreme weather events, be it summer heat waves, be it rain in the winter, be it rain now, be it flooding, be it all that sort of thing, stronger storms. Is this climate change is the big question. Now, I'm a big believer of you can't conflate, you can't say the two things are the same, weather and climate change. There is evidence out there that the climate is changing globally. And if you take the world as a whole, you look around the world, there are all sorts of extreme weather events going on. But taking extreme weather events in isolation and saying that is climate change, I think is unscientific and slightly dodgy. In a nutshell, the climate is changing, and with a higher temperature, a higher global temperature, you are going to expect a greater probability of extreme weather events. We are seeing that in the UK. This quite well could well be one of them. So yes, there is credibility to the theory that we are experiencing a change in our weather in the UK, and that could well be linked to a change in climate, and this could be part of it.
And what is sort of a little bit dispiriting is the fact that the kind of scenes that we saw yesterday and could well see in other parts of the country today is sort of reminiscent of what we would expect to see much later on in the season.
Yeah.
And the impact that this is going to have on the water table, on our rivers, and our ability to cope as we go through potentially another wet winter is worrying.
Yes, and I was actually looking this morning at some past flooding events in the UK to sort of say, because I was thinking this is very, very early, and the winter floods of 2012, if you can remember far back, it's when a lot of the country was under a lot of water, all right through Christmas and into the start of the new year. That was at the end of the storm season, or the middle to the end of the storm season. We are right at the very beginning, and there is more rain on the way. Now, the jet stream, which drives a lot of our weather, has been stuck over the UK for a lot of the summer, and that's brought the unpleasant summer we've had.
Cold summer.
Cold and wet and windy. If that jet stream stays where it is going to continue to steer in low-pressure systems from the west. And at this time of the year, the low-pressure systems that come in off the Atlantic come laden with rain. And if we're already seeing flooding at this time of year, with more rain and more lows to come in through the coming week and through the coming season, I would expect to say that we should probably brace ourselves for some problems with flooding as we go forward into the year and through Christmas.
What about predicting that flooding? We had Woburn yesterday, tremendous amount of rainfall there. Is there any way where this becomes obvious so you can defend yourself against this?
You can. It's a very good question, because flooding tends to happen when intense bursts of rain happen in very short amounts of time. In Woburn, they had 5 inches of rain in a day, which is 2 months' worth. Absolutely intense, and that causes a deluge. The ground is still quite dry because we've actually had quite a dry summer, so it runs off in torrents, and that causes a flooding. If you're on a floodplain, you will know where that is. Actually, there's a very good website, I can't remember it off the top of my head, where you can see where you live.
Why don't you put it on your social?
I'll put it on my social later, so you can have a look at that, where you can see where you live is going to be affected by flooding or is at high risk of flooding. But I would suspect that the Environment Agency, who issue their flood alerts and their flood warnings, are a good place to start looking in the Met Office, where they are showing heavy rain. But what's quite interesting and quite worrying is these intense rainfall that we're seeing in such a short period of time. Over the weekend, we had what was called a supercell thunderstorm, which was in the south, and that's a very, very, very intense thunderstorm that generates very, very quickly and dumps a huge amount of rain in a short amount of time. And within hours, we were seeing pictures of cars submerged and villages submerged and people with their communities underwater. So mitigate the damages, know where your property is, and also keep an eye on the forecast and be aware that we are going into a wet and windy season, and there is probably going to be more rain on the way.
Nathan? Thank you very much indeed for that.
I was going to say if anyone was affected by the floods to get in touch, but the reality is they'll be dealing with sorting their houses, their cars or whatever else out. They won't necessarily be watching us, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll be listening on the radio.
But are they getting help to do that? That's the question. You know, I wouldn't know where to begin with that and how you were going to put it together.
It's very traumatic to have a home flooded. The smell, the damage, you know, your precious goods. I mean, how many of your precious family photo albums are on the ground floor of your house, for example?
Well, I'm immediately thinking, as Nathan was talking about Woburn and the flooding there, Woburn's a very small, intimate place, really nice place. The suit is from Woburn. My tailor is in Woburn, in a little Dickensian tailor shop. And I just think, I hope he's not affected, Jeff and the boys. I hope everything's OK with where you are. But let us know how it's affected you, and we'll reflect that throughout the programme this morning.
If you're worried about what the weather's going to be doing today where you are, here's a little look at the forecast with Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Following the very heavy rain that we've seen across some central and southern parts of the UK over the last few days, today is brighter and drier in the south. Still some showers around, but this time it's the turn of the north, specifically northern and eastern Scotland, where we'll see some wet weather during the next few hours. Persistent and at times heavy outbreaks of rain. Scattered showers for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, much of northern and central England as well as Wales, mostly dry to the south. Some areas of cloud around, but also a few glimmers of sunshine, so certainly drier and brighter compared with yesterday. Highs of 18 Celsius in the south. Colder further north, with a bit of a northerly wind setting in across Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England. And the showers tending to break up a lot more into the evening. Some late brightness arriving into the north of Scotland before the sun goes down. Likewise for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, a few gaps in the clouds, but plenty of showers around. And for northern and central England, parts of Wales, again, a few showers, but also some clear spells. Mostly dry for East Anglia and southern counties of England, after we've seen so much rain during the last few days. Heading into the evening, clearing skies for many, but there will be some areas of cloud floating about for the central belt into southern Scotland, parts of northern England. Some showers keep going here, likewise for northern Scotland. Where we've got the clear skies elsewhere, though, it's going to be a cool night with temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in the north, mild in the far south as it starts to turn cloudy for the start of Wednesday, and this area of rain begins to move in. Now, that's going to turn things wet by the afternoon across parts of the south and southwest, as well as eventually Northern Ireland. But ahead of that, some brightness remains across Scotland, northern and eastern England. Just some showers around, but it's again cold in the north, milder further south, and then very unsettled into Thursday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Other news that we've got for you on this Tuesday morning. Nearly 500 people were killed by Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon yesterday. It marks the nation's deadliest day in decades. That's as Israel vows to do whatever is necessary to push Hezbollah away from its northern border. In a sign of escalation, the US has confirmed additional troops are being sent to the Middle East.
New laws have come into force today banning protesters from gathering within 200 metres of abortion clinics in Scotland. The MSP, who led the campaign, Gillian McKay, has hailed the move a crucial day for reproductive rights. Next month, safe zones will also become law around abortion clinics in England and Wales.
A judge has ruled Prince Harry's visa application should remain private after a lawsuit was brought to make it public. That's after the Duke of Sussex admitted to using drugs, including marijuana and cocaine, in his memoir Spare. Drug use must be disclosed in American visa applications and can lead to rejections. OK, so up next, we are going to talk about tracking your children on phones. And we're saying children, but we're talking about, you know, a lot of kids who are adults, well and truly.
It's got people chatting on Your Say, so we'll try and get some of those views put together and debate that after this. I mean, I can understand it for pets. We've seen the royals, haven't we? Mike and Zara talk about air tagging their daughter Mia. They're high profile. She's is little. You can understand maybe why they would do that. But your adult kids, what do you think? Send your thoughts in and we'll have those for you after the break.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel. Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us!
feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Britain I grew up in was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth, available at gbnews.com.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, as students have headed back to university, more parents than ever are reporting tracking their adult children.
Well, countless apps and safety features on your phones, and that will allow you to keep tabs on them. But at what point does caution run into being a controlling parent?
Well, to debate this morning, if parents should track their kids, we're joined by presenter and commentator Danielle Mason, as well as the inclusion consultant Kirsty Nicole Hadley. I want to start with you, first of all, Danielle. You're in favour of this because, and I suppose a lot of people might say, actually, their kids are also in favour of this. It's like, you know, it's a mutually sort of agreed thing that we kind of keep an eye on each other. It's a loving thing to do.
Well, I think you need to sit down and have this conversation with your children. You know, get some trust boundaries in place. They can have a tracker on you, you can have a tracker on them. It is really for a safety precaution because, as we know, crime rates and rape rates and things like that, they've all gone up. And it's not so much the fact of sitting there watching your child all the time in what they're doing. I know it's their adult life, but it's more the fact that if there was an emergency or something like that, you know exactly where they are. It saves time with the, you know, if you had to call the police out, it would save time with the police because you'd know where they are straight away.
But no, your children are Rudy and Delilah, and they're how old?
At the moment, they're 13 and 11, and
Right.
I have a 360 app on their phone, but my son does like to turn it off. So, you know...
But OK, at 11 and 13, but think if they're 18 and 20 or so on that. You're not going to be doing it then, surely?
Well, if I'm paying their bill, which if they're going to university, like the thing that I've been... If I'm paying their bill, then I think it's fair that I have a tracker on it because it's my piece of equipment. Not only that, but if they're going to uni or something like that, I'm not saying I'm going to sit there and track their app all the time, But if they was to go on a date or something like that, I mean, I'm not going to be a nosy mum peering up the window going, hello. Like, it is literally...
You swear?
Yeah, I swear. It is literally just to know where they are in case of an emergency.
So you see it solely as caring. Let's bring in Kirsty Nicole Hadley, who presumably you think that this is controlling.
It's not that I think it's controlling. I just think that, first of all, I think that kids do as we do, not as we say. So I'm not sure that it's modelling like a healthy version of relationships for the future. And I think especially when we're raising young men, the last thing the world needs is like another man-child, as women all over the world will attest to. So teaching our kids how to maintain and respect healthy boundaries, how to respect consent, whilst also giving them freedom to make mistakes and autonomy and privacy as well. And I think for me, the biggest goal in parenting is to have open lines of communication. So I would want my child to be able to come to me with problems and come to me if there's an issue. And I also think that we live in a world where surveillance is everywhere already. You know, like there's CCTV all over the place, phones are tracked full stop anyway. Credit card transactions, your travel, like it's pretty hard to disappear nowadays.
Yes, but Kirsty, I mean, I always take the view, if you've got nothing to hide, what's the problem? Like, I don't mind if my family want to track me. I'm not doing anything that other than I would just want to know that someone knows that I'm safe.
I don't know that's going to change. That could change.
I know, I'm not going to do anything that's going to be secretive.
It doesn't matter, some frisky old man could be whipping you
well,
off
that's
somewhere.
Exactly what I want my family to be aware of. They can protect me from it.
I do get that, and I do think it's a personal choice, but I really think that for me, you know, and as you guys know, maybe some viewers don't know, but I work in the field of inclusion, so it's autistic and ADHD brains that I work with a lot, and as part of that, mental health, anxiety, and I think that for me, it's really important to equip our kids with the confidence and the ability to make mistakes, but also to make good choices on their own.
Well, let's get Danielle back into this debate, because you were just saying in the break, but what about that kid Jay who disappeared in Tenerife? He was a boy, you know, wouldn't it have been nice for his mum if they could have known where he was?
Yeah, I mean, it would have saved a lot of police resources and possibly saved his life, because the girl would have known where he was, so they could have gone straight there. But not only that, for me, obviously you were touching on the base of autism and ADHD. I myself, I've got an autistic child, but for me that would be more of a reason for me to want to have the tracker on the phone, because he could say something silly when he's out or something like that and upset somebody. But I understand that you want to give kids their freedom. They've got their freedom. I'm not tracking their messages. I'm not tracking their calls. I'm not interested in that. It is just literally for emergencies. You know, if someone ended up in a ditch or something like that, then I know where they are.
But you could see the temptation, couldn't you, to be a nag and be like, darling, why are you coming home at 4 a.m? You need to pull your finger out, start doing some work. And I have to say, Kirsty, you are right. We don't need any more grown-up man children.
You can track speeding as well, by the way.
Oh, stop!
You can track what?
Don't know why you're looking at me.
If your kids are speeding.
Can you?
Yes.
Oh, you see, I'm trying to track my suitcase at the minute.
You'll have no luck with that.
No, and I can't even find the app that's on it here.
What's it called?
I don't know what it's called.
AirTag or...
But it was... Well,
Vinted, not that one.
I don't know where it is. Anyway, but when it does work, when it's there, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
Be able to put your baggage on the plane.
AirTag on your pets? Would you do that, Kirsty, or they got, you know, they got to have their freedom protected? I don't want to draw the line.
I'd rather track my pet than any of my children.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think probably most people.
I would literally track everything but my child.
Yeah, fair enough. OK, well, there's plenty for people to let us know what they think about this morning on that. Most people probably fall... I don't know which camp most people will fall into. We've got a divided opinion here. I'm fine with it. I'm all for it.
Weird. It's fine if it's children. This little goo-goo gaga
They'll always
children.
be my children.
About 21-year-olds.
They'll always be my babies.
I think you'll find out at 15, 16, 17 they'll not be your babies, but that's a whole other thing. You could be like Danielle here and force this relationship there will be a relationship between us. I will know what's going on with you here and now. Well, I hope whatever they stay safe anyway.
Yeah,
thank you very much indeed. Lovely talking to you, Nicole. Lovely talking to you, Danielle, as well. Thank you.
Just think how many tracking
Where
devices...
are they at the moment, incidentally, while you're in here?
Well, one I left in bed.
Have a look. Have a look.
Just as I was walking out the door at 5 o'clock this morning, Mum, my PE kit. I said, why didn't you tell me last night? So I left her in bed. She's off to school, and my dad is taking my other child off.
And will he get the PE kit, will he?
Well, someone's going to have to.
Somebody's going to have to. OK.
Just imagine how many tracking devices you could buy with £36,000. That is £3,000 a month, tax-free for a whole year.
You could be the next Great British Giveaway winner with a whopping £36,000 in tax-free cash in your bank account. Imagine getting the winning phone call for that. Luck.
The votes are in, and I think people are on my side, Eamonn. I'm 78. My daughter tags me. I think it's a great idea. Thank you, Rita. Lisa says, I used to track my mum when she'd go on dates, as she was in her late 60s at the time. There was a time when she didn't answer any texts or calls that I went and found her to make sure she was OK. Needless to say, that date didn't go very well.
So this is children tracking their parents?
Yeah. So, you know, adults tracking other adults. Lots of lovely, loving reasons behind this.
World is full of weirdos. Anyway, there we go. Will we take a break?
Let's take a break, but basically everyone agrees with me. Paul Coyte will be here. He also agrees with me, incidentally, with all the sport after this great break.
The latest GB News travel.
And a very good morning. I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays of at least half an hour continue heading east towards Edinburgh along the M8. One lane's blocked off from junction 3 to 2 between the Livingston exit and the M9 past the scene of an accident. On the M6 in the West Midlands, there are delays of about half an hour heading south down to junction 5 at the Castle Bromwich exit. The outside lane of 4 closed off where a car's broken down. Queues back to 7 a Grey Bar back towards Birmingham. South of Bedford, the A421 closed because of flooding, as is the A5 northbound in Buckinghamshire through Milton Keynes off the Abbey Hill roundabout, and long delays out of Essex into Kent on the clockwise M25 following a collision that's now been moved on to the hard shoulder just after junction 2, the Darren Finch change. There are queues back into Essex over the Queensview Bridge to Lakeside, and on London Underground both Ruislip and Stepney Green stations are closed. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, there was a big fallout, handbags at the Arsenal-Man City game on Sunday. It's still going on, the fallout from it. Let's go to Paul for the very latest.
Ian Wright, Arsenal legend, lovely man Ian Wright, has branded Erling Haaland a coward because when Manchester City scored the equaliser, you know, often you get they run to pull the ball out of the net, so Haaland goes down, gets the ball, and Gabriel, the defender, is actually, because he was so upset, he's pulled the shirt over the top of his head, and then Erling Haaland's gone, thrown the ball at the back of his head, bounced it off.
Playful.
I agree. Playful, but Ian Wright has said cowardly, you know, and that he thought he was better than that.
Oh, come on.
And it's just, it's not like getting a ball and going, I'm going to slam it at your head now. He just throws it at the back of his head. But anyway, it then started kicking off a little bit more. So Erling Haaland, he reminded me of pretty much, you know, I don't know whether you probably wouldn't have been to those pubs, Isabel, I'm sure Eamonn would have done, where you get the bloke that's always looking for a fight.
I've been, as
have
a
you been in those?
To a lot of footy pubs, yeah.
Have you?
Yeah,
well, not
loads.
football, I'm not talking about football,
right.
I mean just generally. I remember a fellow that once goes, "Oi, you throw a beer over my back," and I'm like, "No, I didn't." And, you know, they're just looking for... Have a look at this. This is Erling Haaland afterwards, and he says to Mikel Arteta, by the way, listen out for this. So he goes even to the Arsenal manager, stay humble. You know, this is like a 21-year-old telling the manager to stay humble. Anyway, this is what happened after the game. Have a look at this. Stay humble, Stay humble, Arteta or Captain Black. Captain Black is just moving Captain Ochre out the way.
You know I love Grealish. Was he trying to stop it and being a good boy?
Jack's
no effing and blinding from him.
Come on, let's move away.
Like him, yeah.
Let's move away. So, I mean, it was just a little bit of argy-bargy there at the end.
It was unnecessary, patronising and arrogant, but there we go.
But you have to have a bit of argy-bargy.
You
What's
love
the
it.
point of... Yeah, well,
I do as well.
If I was
It's a man thing.
If I was a footballer, I would constantly be on a red card.
It's testosterone fueled.
You know, what you often hear when you watch football, and let's be honest here, and you'll get, oh, you don't want to see that in football. You do. Well, yes, we do.
Yes,
we do enjoy a bit of it.
That's why
it's not inciting. This is the thing. It's not inciting stuff in the crowd, but it shows passion.
On the
a little
pitch.
bit of argy-bargy.
Not. You know, not once the whistle's been blown. I mean, whilst you're playing, but be gentlemanly once it's done. That's my view.
OK.
I'm a rugby girl. That's how it works.
I know.
Oh, yes. They never touch each other.
No, they're polite afterwards. Shake hands. It's a big thing.
So wonderful.
Everton have American owners. The Friedkin Group, led by American billionaire Dan Friedkin, have now bought Everton. They said, we're pleased to have reached an agreement to become custodians of this iconic football club, which is going to, whether it's going to lift them off the
championship side.
They're going to a new stadium, of course, at Bramley Dock at the end of the season, and they're bottom of the Premier League at the moment. So can you imagine? I mean, I've spoken to Everton fans. There we are. There's Goodison Park, but Bramley Dock, which is an incredible new stadium. Can you imagine if Everton fans just don't want me to say this, but they know it's possible that they could start in their new stadium in the Championship.
Well, they could, but to be the best team in the Championship, won't they? I mean, it'll be incredible for them.
It'd be a good way to get plenty of wins. Right, quick, do you want to do some birthdays?
Yeah, always.
OK, first one, birthdays, all sporting birthdays today. Some very famous names and some very lovely people as well. How old are they today? First.
Can't wait to see who. Oh, my man, Ali. Ali's a great guy.
He's one of the loveliest men I know.
Absolutely right.
Ali McCoist, great player, Rangers, Scotland, the best pundit and a lovely fella.
58.
How old is Ali today?
58.
58?
No, he's near me. He's 62.
Is the right answer. One very good. Yeah. Let's go with another one. OK, Ali McCoist, happy birthday, Ali. Might be busy at the moment. Owen Farrell. Owen Farrell, former, and there's a rugby one there for Isabel.
30s.
A gentleman, of course. A gentleman of the game.
Obviously.
Has a fight, but always shakes hands afterwards.
33.
33 for Owen Farrell. 33.
36.
33 is the right answer.
No
we have a tie break. Who is this 2012 Olympics cyclist? Victoria Pendleton. There she is, gold medalist in the Keirin, London 2012. So there we are, might help with the age. How old is she?
I'm going to go 33 again.
You're going to go 33? Well, London 2012? So you're going to think she's going to be a teenager?
I'd say she's maybe 37.
37, 44.
What?
Oh, yeah.
She's older than
44, she is, yeah.
Crikey.
Yeah.
She looks great.
And not only that,
was
she
a while
cycles
ago.
better than you do as well.
Yeah, it was.
Not that I've ever seen her, but once the batteries.
And incidentally, viewers and listeners, if you are interested and you've got gifts to give or whatever, it is Isabel's birthday.
Oh, stop.
This Sunday. And
Well
how do I remember that? How do I know that?
You put it in your diary.
Spurs, Man United.
Because it is Spurs. It's Man United Spurs.
Sorry, Man United Spurs. Yeah. Old Trafford could be. Yeah. So there we are.
Yeah.
That's the way we're going to celebrate.
We're going to celebrate. I want you to know we're
thanks.
thinking
You're going
of
to raise a glass for me.
And you know what? We'll have a bit of argy-bargy during the game, but we'll be friends afterwards.
There's nothing wrong with a bit of pushing and shoving and
exactly.
and hoping someone's going to hold you back in case.
I know you can't. Someone grab me.
Somebody grab me, hold me back.
Does make you dislike Eric Haaland from that? I just came away thinking. Oh, sorry. Erland, Eric. Oh, you know, makes me dislike him. I don't like him now.
You know what? That was a bit.
Yeah, I thought it was rude.
Okay.
Call me old-fashioned.
We're going to be rude after the break with a lot of...
Going to give you smarty-bargy, seeing as you like it.
So back talking about what's in the paper straight after this.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
70% of population will make a judgment on someone just by looking at them. And within 2-3 seconds, we make a decision if we like someone or not.
Really? Is it that quick?
So it's actually very, very fast. So before we have a chance to kind of express what we want to say, our subconscious mind is kind of looking for clues. So you look at someone and you look at their, for example, I don't know, the watch they're wearing, maybe the makeup. I spent literally my whole childhood learning, being absolutely mesmerized by my mom's ability to choose different style of clothing for different style personalities. British definitely take a pride in their appearance. They do spend time to look good. There is a lot of amazing British designers. For me, it was always about that feeling that I've learned from my mom's shop, how the people were living, buying certain things. And I was like, oh my God, they look happy. They've got this big smile on their face. My main objective always was to make people feel good. So now as a stylist, I help them to go through style therapy. I help them to discover colors that are good for their colors that they wear them close to their face, but also it sets the tone for their wardrobe. And then we look at the outfit formula. So it's, yeah. When I look at Ellie's dress sense, I was just thinking, OK, she likes to be polished.
I do like to be polished.
Exactly. Elegant, timeless. I look at the reference to the dress you're wearing today. It's that kind of Chanel black and white, timeless, never go out of fashion. So for me, it's about, it's not the trends, but how you would like your personal style to be and how timeless it can be.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 7:44. We're going through the papers this morning with Claire Muldoon and Theo Usherwood. And Claire, we're going to start with this story about fury as Labour silences the winter fuel pay debate, which is going to be a bit of an embarrassing vote at conference yesterday. They've managed to delay it so that both Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer will be long gone.
I know.
So...
And
this is critical. It's such a huge political pendulum at the moment that's swinging in both sides of the political stratosphere, but also in the electorate. I mean, people are saying now, I think there's talk about post-purchase dissidence. I think a lot of people are really, really sick and tired of the new regime at the moment, and I don't think they'll be very pleased about the way their vote has gone. They were promised change, and even yesterday Rachel Reeves was going on again. The rhetoric, change, discourse, change, everything, change. There is no change. You know, and before the election, it was bombarded, the right wing, everyone's far right. You can't have a far right without having a far left, or the pendulum to be able to swing to something that people can identify with. And then we see manipulation. This has not been timetabled. It was supposed to have been timetabled for Labour, for the conference, to be discussed, and yet it wasn't. It was moved. Why? Because they know it's such a really hot political potato at the moment. Well, Rachel Reeves in her speech saying she's not going to duck the difficult decisions, and she thought long and hard about this, but it was the fault of the legacy that she inherited, etc.
So she's, you know, it's stage management. They've put it into a part of the conference where, the back end of the conference, where Keir Starmer's not going to be there to have to face down the trade unions. All 5 unions, of course, signed this motion when it comes to, and this is part of the sort of Labour Party conference process, condemning this, you know, decision to scrap the winter fuel allowance. And rather than have that sort of embarrassing moment with Keir Starmer sitting on the stage as delegates at the Labour Party conference vote in favour of it, even if it's non-binding, and those awkward photographs and the camera panning around to see their disconsolate faces, I think they've decided that actually it's much safer just to move it and try and save their blushes.
Do you think he regrets it, Theo? Do you think he regrets?
I think they've got themselves into this situation where they didn't have the political antennae to actually spot the problem early on.
Are they stupid?
Yeah, well,
a blind man, a galloping horse could see the problem.
Yes, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
But if you have, you know, when George Osborne had this with the pasty tax, it was within 48 hours he'd done the U-turn. When Philip Hammond had it when he was Chancellor with the National Insurance contributions, within 48 hours he'd made the U-turn. But suddenly, when you leave it for weeks and then months, without making a U-turn, it suddenly becomes, the debate becomes about your own credibility. It becomes about whether you're a strong chancellor or a strong
crowd, bang, crowd.
You know, and exactly that.
If you're a socialist government, this is exactly the sort of thing you should be doing.
Yes.
So it's obvious that is the sort of thing that you should not be taking away from the electorate.
Absolutely. But are they a socialist government? And that's the big question. But where is the opposition? Where is the opposition?
This is part of the problem, because we're not going to get until the very beginning of November. We're not going to have a new Conservative leader. The budget's on October the 30th, and as it's this rather arcane procedure within Parliament, where it's the opposition leader of the opposition who responds to a budget. So it's going to be Rishi Sunak responding to Rachel Reeves. Rishi Sunak isn't even giving a speech at the Conservative Party conference. I think there's got to be real questions now about actually, when you look to the Conservative leadership, whether they actually just need to bring forward that final, final decision. OK, members will have a slightly shorter time to cast their vote,
but
so that a new leader is in charge for the budget.
Meanwhile, where does this leave us with what the government, the present government, thinks of nurses? They settled big time with the doctors, 11% or whatever. 5.5% with the nurses, and Rachel Reeves was heckled yesterday over this.
Yeah, good. I mean, good. If the nurses have to get nursing degrees, they've got student debt. Right? And a lot of them can make up their earnings through shift work. We've had it reported that under the Conservatives, nurses were visiting food banks. Everyone was up in arms about that. You know, it's a front-facing, really important job, notwithstanding the fact that it is part of the National Health Service, but there's other carers, there's other nurses in other environments that have to be paid as well.
Well, you hit upon something there. Not a single word or mention from Rachel Reeves yesterday about the caring sector.
Yes.
At all.
Which is huge. And also the fact that the train drivers were given 20%.
I mean, 70 grand, like, for running a train against someone who's had to study hard, work hard.
Well, and they're caring for people, vocational people.
Well, they're caring for every one of us needs a nurse.
But we've got a shortage of nurses of 43,000 within the NHS. They can't fill the vacancies because it's just not an attractive enough profession to go into. You're paying fees of up to £30,000, somewhere between £15,000 and £30,000. You get a grant of £5,000 and an average salary of just over £30,000. It just doesn't work. And so in order to make nursing, and it's an incredibly difficult job, 12-hour shifts back to back,
It's
nights and days and nights and days. It's a really hard job, and I think the government actually needs to look at this one again, because it seems to me that when we're looking at those public sector pay workers who get the big pay rises, it's the ones who can cause the most disruption that get the 14% in the case of train drivers, the 22%.
There to shout their corner.
Yes.
OK. Right, if you two were heading off on holiday or business travel or whatever somewhere by airplane, would you care what speed it went to? Because if it goes slower than it is at the minute, it could reduce fuel intake by 5 to 7%. Does this concern you, Claire, or not?
What do you think?
No.
No, exactly. I really don't give two hoots. I would rather... I mean, the thing is with air travel, right, people are, like, getting really drunk at airports. We've got an issue with how people behave in air. Why do you want to prolong that? Children on a flight, why do you want them sitting next to you longer?
Emissions, Claire.
Oh, goodness me, Isabel.
Well, you don't think
what
planes
about
release emissions? They're the most emitting mode of transport. And we look around the world. We've got Argentina and wildfires. We've got floods across southern Europe, the Danube. We've got Canada, South Africa under snow. We've got crazy weather here in September.
We just need to change, or we can go skiing to South Africa then instead of skiing somewhere else. If our trains worked in this country, if they were cheaper, we wouldn't have to fly to cities. There's other modes of transport. If I got on a plane, I'm paying a premium. I want to get there as quickly as I could. And if Concorde was still around, I would do it.
A programme yesterday on some sort of catch-up thing, and it's serialised 7 episodes or so, and I got to episode 3. And this is about a train that leaves Glasgow train station going to London, and it's got a bomb on board. So it is, and it can't stop.
It's on iPlayer Night Sleeper.
Yes, I've heard about this,
So anyway, I was just watching that. It's put me off going back to sleeper overnight anyway to Scotland. That's that. Right, what's next here?
Well, let's talk about Gen Zs who want to consciously unboss. This is a play on the conscious uncoupling of Gwyneth and Chris Martin.
I'm going to stick up for Gen Z on this one. Because
you want to consciously unboss as well.
You want to be a Gen Z, that's the thing. You take oat milk in your coffee, Theo.
No, I don't, actually. I've just went and ordered a coffee before coming on this particular hour, and I ordered, and you have to now say I want normal milk. And, of course, they go, what's that, oat milk? No, cow's milk, please.
Gosh.
No, but seriously, I think there's an issue here where I think young people coming into the workplace have got a particularly raw deal, and I think especially around working from home, they're not getting the mentoring, they're not getting the support that they need in offices, and actually. Why, if they suddenly check out, whether it's quiet quitting and they're not, giving their all to a job, and they're working at home, on a Monday and a Friday, and they're not getting that support, they're not getting that training in the workplace, then if they suddenly turn around, you can't be surprised when they suddenly turn around and say, well, actually, I'm not a massive fan of going into middle management, because middle management, you're dealing with unruly employees potentially who, of course, and then you're dealing with senior management who are putting the pressure on. It's the most thankless task.
Everyone hates you.
Everyone hates you,
and those below you.
Precisely. So I think if you want to,
that's not a Gen Z thing. That's a middle management thing.
Yes, but
these kids have to suck it up, Theo.
If you want to get to the top, you've got to go through the middle.
Come on.
But yeah, look. I'm not disputing that, but if you want them to, if you want Gen Zers, to come into the workplace and to make the most of it and to get the most out of it, then you've got to offer them more than an environment where it's just working from home and lack of training.
We're going to
Do you hate your boss or love your boss? Let us know. Whether you hate or love the weather, Aidan McGivern will put you in the picture.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Following the very heavy rain that we've seen across some central and southern parts of the UK over the last few days, today is brighter and drier in the south. Still some showers around, but this time it's the turn of the north, specifically northern and eastern Scotland, where we'll see some wet weather during the next few hours. Persistent and at times heavy outbreaks of rain. Scattered showers for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, much of northern and central England as well as Wales, mostly dry to the south. Some areas of cloud around, but also a few glimmers of sunshine, so certainly drier and brighter compared with yesterday. Highs of 18 Celsius in the south. Colder further north, with a bit of a northerly wind setting in across Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England. And the showers tending to break up a lot more into the evening. Some late brightness arriving into the north of Scotland before the sun goes down. Likewise for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, a few gaps in the clouds, but plenty of showers around. And for northern and central England, parts of Wales, again, a few showers, but also some clear spells. Mostly dry for East Anglia and southern counties of England, after we've seen so much rain during the last few days. Heading into the evening, clearing skies for many, but there will be some areas of cloud floating about for the central belt into southern Scotland, parts of northern England. Some showers keep going here, likewise for northern Scotland. Where we've got the clear skies elsewhere, though, it's going to be a cool night with temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in the north, mild in the far south as it starts to turn cloudy for the start of Wednesday, and this area of rain begins to move in. Now that's going to turn things wet by the afternoon across parts of the south and southwest, as well as eventually Northern Ireland. But ahead of that, some brightness remains across Scotland, northern and eastern England. Just some showers around, but it's again cold in the north, milder further south, and then very unsettled into Thursday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays of about an hour continue heading east towards Edinburgh along the M8, where traffic has been squeezed into the inside lane past the scene of an accident between the Livingston turnoff and the M9 junction 3 to 2, of course. And various roads remain shut because of flooding. Well, south of Leicester, Narborough Road South is being described as impassable between Elstone and Braunston. The A421 is closed south of Bedford off the M1, and the A5 in Milton Keynes is closed northbound from the Portway roundabout to the Abbey Hill roundabout, and a few miles north of there, the A422, the Newport Road, shut off the Chichilly Hill roundabout because of flooding. In Hampshire, Romsey, the Great Bridge Road closed. A lorry struck the railway bridge, and on the trains were buses in for London North Western services, Bletchley to Bedford for the emergency engineering works. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You could be the next Great British Giveaway winner with a whopping £36,000 in tax-free cash in your bank account. Imagine getting the winning phone call for that. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Keir Starmer preparing to give his first conference speech as Prime Minister today.
The Labour leader will promise light at the end of the tunnel after the Chancellor Rachel Reeves said there will be no return to austerity on her watch.
So it will be a budget with real ambition, a budget to fix the foundations, a budget to deliver the change that we promised, a budget to rebuild Britain.
With that £22 billion black hole in public spending, the Prime Minister will pledge to crack down on benefit fraudsters. In just over an hour, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, that's Pat McFadden to you and me, is joining breakfast ahead of Starmer's speech.
From today, it becomes illegal to own zombie knives or machetes. GB News talks to a campaigner who worries that doesn't go far enough.
It's an absolute waste of time because zombie swords are just a part of the fashion. Zombie swords aren't, or machetes aren't brainwashing kids. That's not the problem. That's not the root cause. It's just like this big illusion to make the government look to the public to look like they're doing something.
Good news for Prince Harry, as a judge has ruled that his US visa application should remain private despite his admission to taking drugs in his memoir.
And in Northwest sports news today, I'm like Bob Wellings on Nationwide.
Yeah.
It's local. Everton becomes the latest American-owned Premier League club. Manchester United's new ground could boost the economy by £7.3 billion, and a huge blow for Manchester City, as Rodri could be out for the rest of the season.
During the past few days, we've seen some electrifying thunderstorms and torrential outbreaks of rain. Will today be any quieter for southern parts of the UK? Has the rain shifted further north? I'll have the full details in the forecast coming up shortly.
Hello there, good morning to you on this Tuesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
It's 8:01, I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
So Keir Starmer insists there is light at the end of the tunnel as he's set to address his first party conference as Prime Minister. He will be doing that 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Yeah, and in his speech, he's going to try and strike a more positive note as he sets out his ambition to build a new Britain, urging tough decisions are a short-term step to national renewal.
Well, that's after the Chancellor, there you see her, Rachel Reeves, had her speech interrupted by hecklers. She pledged no return to austerity and defended the recent winter fuel payment cuts as a hard but fair decision.
There will be no return to austerity. And I made the choice to means test the winter fuel payment so that it is only targeted at those most in need. I know that not everyone in this hall or in the country will agree with every decision that I make. But I will not duck those decisions.
Also set to speak today is the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. She announces a crackdown on crime.
Well, joining us from Liverpool, let's go to our political correspondent, Catherine Foster, today, with her view and her take on the lineup today. Catherine.
Yes, good morning, both. A big moment for the new Prime Minister today, the first Labour Prime Minister to address a conference in 14 years. They've been out of power for a long time. They've come in with this huge majority. But what strikes me is that the Labour conference here in Liverpool this time last year, the mood was very upbeat, very positive. There was a real energy. Now, of course, they are over the moon to be in power, but governing is hard, and they are having a number of teething problems. They will hope that they are only teething problems. In the first 2.5 months, their approval ratings are diving. There's a lot of unhappiness about donations, infighting in number 10, the winter fuel allowance, and the general note of sort of doom and gloom that was set over the last weeks, saying just that Britain is fundamentally broken and how difficult it is, this £22 billion black hole, and so on. So I think there is now a very deliberate attempt to try to sort of reset that and reframe that and be more optimistic. Now, we heard it from Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, yesterday. She began all very smiley, talking about how she was the first female Chancellor in history, and saying that despite the tough decisions that she was having to make, that she had, infinite belief in the possibilities and the opportunities for Britain. So we will hear from the Prime Minister today similarly about hope and about optimism. He's going to say that he understands that the cost of living crisis drew a veil over the joy and wonder in our lives, and that people want respite and relief. We expect he'll talk about building a new Britain and a shared struggle, but fundamentally saying look, we've got to make tough choices now, but it will be worth it. We will come out of the other side. Things will be better. A few specific policies he's likely to touch on, crackdown on benefit fraud, also talking about training British workers for British jobs. I'm quoting Gordon Brown there, but rather than relying on foreign labour, that's something, of course, that many governments have talked about for a very, very long time, while there's still huge skills gaps in this country, and also a Hillsborough law that he promised the victims of families of the Hillsborough disaster back in the late 1980s, that he would address this. Many people from that tragedy, affected by that tragedy, and others, of course, still waiting for justice decades later. So promising some hope, promising some optimism. It's rained here pretty much solidly for 2 days. It's finally stopped raining. Can he get us all feeling a bit more optimistic and move the conversation on from spectacles and donations and freebies and the winter fuel allowance?
Thank you, Catherine. Catherine there at conference. She's there throughout the day, and we'll have full coverage of Keir Starmer, what he has to say throughout the day here on GB News.
Yeah, that's bang on 2 o'clock and right in the middle of Good Afternoon Britain, so you can watch it there.
The public doesn't have a strong interest in Prince Harry's immigration records. That's the ruling from a judge in America.
Well, that's after a lawsuit was brought forward in an effort to get the US government to publicly release the Duke's visa application.
Well, in his memoir, Spare, the Prince admitted to taking drugs. Now, if that's the case, that is a factor that could lead to his visa being rejected, but it hasn't. Joining us in studio, GB News' royal correspondent Cameron Walker. What do you make of this, Cameron?
Well, it looks like Prince Harry's not being kicked out of the United States anytime soon, doesn't it? As you say, he did admit in his memoir Spare to taking illegal substances, cocaine, marijuana, psychedelic mushrooms, and the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative with a small c think tank based in Washington, D.C., put in a Freedom of Information request to the US government to release Prince Harry's immigration records because they were arguing either Prince Harry lied on his form or US officials looked the other way because he was a prince and allowed him in the country anyway. The US government refused that Freedom of Information request, and therefore the Heritage Foundation decided to sue them to get a judge to force them to release this immigration record. And the judge last night, US Judge Carl Nichols, said it's not in the public interest to disclose the Duke's immigration records. The reason being, in his memoir Spare, although he talks about taking these drugs, what he didn't do was talk about his immigration record or his immigration application, and that's the reason why the judge decided to side with the US government in this instance. I think on the one hand, the Heritage Foundation, and I have gone for them for comment, they haven't responded yet, they will say this is a situation where Prince Harry, because he is the King's son, he's been given special treatment here and allowed to enter the United States. And if it was a normal person who'd admitted to taking these substances, there is no way they'd be allowed in the US. I think, on the other hand, Prince Harry clearly is a private individual, and also we don't know what kind of visa he's got. If it's a diplomatic visa, for example, there are some waivers to do with that. And also, Prince Harry is not the first high-profile figure to have admitted to taking illegal drugs who is still allowed in the United States.
What about this argument, though, that it's not in the public interest? I mean, is it not in the public interest to know whether or not royalty are getting special treatment and, you know, whether they're being treated differently from law-abiding citizens? Well,
that's what the Heritage Foundation is going to be arguing, and whether or not they decide to appeal this judge's decision remains to be seen. But I think that's certainly what a number of Conservative commentators have been saying in the United States, that we need to know whether or not Prince Harry has been given special treatments, particularly by the Biden administration. And also, the former President Trump here on GB News spoke to Nigel Farage and said if Prince Harry has found to have lied on his immigration records, there could be quite severe consequences for him.
Cameron, did Harry have to be present for this ruling?
No, he did not, but he is actually in the United States anyway, in New York City, carrying out a number of engagements this week. I have asked Prince Harry's people for comments. They are keeping pretty quiet on this, but I think what Harry's focused on is all of the engagements he's doing in New York, including the Diana Award.
A long period away from the family as well, and some time over here in the UK.
But you were concerned of how uncomfortable he looked.
I just saw some of the reporting yesterday of him at the Diana Awards with Tessie Ojo, a friend of this programme, and they were reporting that he was very twitchy, fiddling with his tie, shifting about in his seat, and I thought, oh, I'll just go and have a look, and I went and sought out the footage. And once he got talking, he relaxed into it. He's known Tessie a long time, and I think she very much puts him at ease. But at the beginning, he looked in the way that Diana sometimes looked, like upset, to be perfectly honest. Now, look, I could be reading into this. We can't speculate about what's going on. I just thought to myself, I hope he's OK.
He may well have just been nervous. And I think what he said at the very start of that panel, he said, oh, I don't usually do this. I'm the one having to ask you guys questions. So I think that might have been part of it. But I think it was interesting when Tessie, who's the CEO of the Diana Award, the charity set up to honour the legacy of his mother, what are you hopeful for, Prince Harry? And there was a group of people on the panel, and he said, oh, can I go last? He couldn't think of something quickly enough. And what he said at the end was the reason I wanted to go last is it's because it's you guys, all of the other people on the panel were about 18 years old. It's you guys that give me hope, the next generation, the young people. So that's what he said. That was his
Very
excuse.
smart thinking on his feet there before he could think of an answer. But, yeah, I don't know. He didn't look his usual confident self. But maybe that's, you know, he's used to quite often being in a double act these days and he's on his own.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. Who knows?
Thanks, Cameron. Cheers. Thanks. Let's have a look at some of the other stories you're waking up to on this Tuesday morning. Nearly 500 people killed by Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon yesterday. That marks the nation's deadliest day in decades. That's as Israel has vowed to do whatever is necessary to push Hezbollah away from its northern border with Lebanon. In a sign of escalation, America has confirmed additional troops are being sent to the Middle East.
New laws have come into force today, banning protesters from gathering within 200 metres of abortion clinics in Scotland. The MSP, who led the campaign, Gillian McKay, has hailed the move a crucial day for reproductive rights. Next month, safe zones will also become law around abortion clinics in England and Wales.
The partner of Nicola Bulley has agreed to take part in a documentary about her disappearance. The 45-year-old mother of two vanished in January last year, and during the search for her body, vigilantes flocked to the scene of her disappearance as online conspiracies went viral. The documentary will focus on the disinformation that surrounded the case before Nicola was eventually found to have accidentally drowned.
I think that will be really cathartic for the husband to actually get involved in that documentary, because I know that, you know, at the time it was such a media frenzy and people were knocking on their doors. He was trying to deal with their girls that were obviously distraught about their mum. He's probably never been able to really address a lot of those allegations that were being levelled at him, frankly. People were suspicious of his role in all of this. Yeah. So, you know, I look forward to watching that. It will be good, and he's taking part.
Looking at a picture of him in the paper today, and there he was sitting with the family dog. Of course, the dog which he was walking that particular day.
The dog could speak.
The dog was just looking very attentively at the camera. And as you say, you know, if it could speak, what would it say? What was the story to tell there?
What went wrong?
Very sad,
never know.
Very sad. OK, let's get your weather update. We go to Aidan McGivern for that this morning, and we hope you're not affected by the downpours which have caused terrible flooding in certain parts of the country. Let's have a look.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Following the very heavy rain that we've seen across some central and southern parts of the UK over the last few days, today is brighter and drier in the south. Still some showers around, but this time it's the turn of the north, specifically northern and eastern Scotland, where we'll see some wet weather during the next few hours. Persistent and at times heavy outbreaks of rain. Scattered showers for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, much of northern and central England as well as Wales, mostly dry to the south, Some areas of cloud around, but also a few glimmers of sunshine, so certainly drier and brighter compared with yesterday. Highs of 18 Celsius in the south. Colder further north, with a bit of a northerly wind setting in across Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England. And the showers tending to break up a lot more into the evening. Some late brightness arriving into the north of Scotland before the sun goes down. Likewise for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, a few gaps in the clouds, but plenty of showers around. And for northern and central England, parts of Wales, again, a few showers, but also some clear spells. Mostly dry for East Anglia and southern counties of England, after we've seen so much rain during the last few days. Heading into the evening, clearing skies for many, but there will be some areas of cloud floating about for the central belt into southern Scotland, parts of northern England. Some showers keep going here, likewise for northern Scotland. Where we've got the clear skies elsewhere, though, it's going to be a cool night with temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in the north, mild in the far south as it starts to turn cloudy for the start of Wednesday, and this area of rain begins to move in. Now that's going to turn things wet by the afternoon across parts of the south and southwest, as well as eventually Northern Ireland. But ahead of that, some brightness remains across Scotland, northern and eastern England. Just some showers around, but it's again cold in the north, milder further south, and then very unsettled into Thursday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
OK, it's that time of the morning where we give you a chance to grab a slice of an incredible £36,000. This is the Great British Giveaway.
Here are all the details of how it could be yours.
Good luck.
We'll take a break after that. More on the new ban on zombie knives, which comes into force today.
Yeah, let's hope it makes our streets safe. We're talking about that after this.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Luis Elizondo says that he worked at the Pentagon and that he knows that they have recovered material that is not from this Earth. He resigned after believing his government wasn't taking the threat of UFOs seriously. So have they been covering up alien material from us?
I don't think the claims that are being made in Luis Elizondo's book, Eamonn, are new, but I think what we have to pay attention to is the seniority of, one, Luis Elizondo, and two, the people who recruited him, and indeed the people he worked for, which was the Department of Defence and the Pentagon.
You think that he was in a position to know about this?
Yeah, he would have been. He would have been speaking to the individuals who were taking part in these investigations. You're showing some of those clips just now that potential incursions by objects controlled by a non-human intelligence, potentially. We're not saying alien necessarily, but something non-human.
Seems a bit far-fetched to me, Andrew. I'm a sceptic.
When people say sceptical, I think as a species, we're relatively new in terms of what we do in space. But right now, we've got a robot on Mars that drives about and has a little helicopter drone that every so often comes up, flies about away 10 feet from it to collect samples and comes back. Now, a species a couple of hundred years down the line from us would have far better technology than that. So who's to say what we're encountering aren't just really advanced probes from something else that's just slightly ahead of us in the technological scale? I don't think that's too far stretch of the imagination.
When you do see things like what we just saw there, which was made public, the New York Times did a big expose on all of this, and actually, you know, the world didn't end. We weren't all outside fighting each other for scraps of food and burning down the nearest Lidl, were we? We just thought, oh, that's quite cool.
I think now we have to look at it and maybe take a step back, look at the people coming out now, talking about UFOs and thinking, is there something to this that we've maybe been overlooking?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Britain I grew up in was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public. Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth. Available at gbnews.com.
We've been talking this week about zombie knives. The ban came into force today, officially illegal. The government says, right, this will help to keep streets safe.
Well, this follows a period of amnesty where knives could be handed into police stations without consequences. And our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, has been looking into the story.
These are a couple of zombie knives that have been handed in at Blackpool. So what you've got here is a blade that is over 8 inches long. It has a point, it has 2 serrated edges, and it has holes cut into it as well. Obviously, this then makes it a zombie knife.
As of today, owning one of these weapons could land you in prison. A new law has been passed which now makes it illegal to own, make or sell a zombie-style knife or machete.
These weapons are viewed as being a status sort of symbol. Hopefully it'll have a massive impact on the community that these weapons won't be around. People won't see them, they won't be intimidated by them. Hopefully we won't have any more tragedies related to these weapons.
But someone who's already experienced tragedy at the hands of knife crime is Byron Heighton. 10 years ago, his brother John Joe was brutally murdered in a knife attack.
Looking like this, guess who their target audience is?
Now, Byron travels the country, sharing his story and teaching school children about the dangers of knives. To him, this new law doesn't go far enough.
It's a waste of time. It's an absolute waste of time because zombie swords are just a part of the fashion. Zombie swords aren't, or machetes aren't brainwashing kids. That's not the problem. That's not the root cause. It's just like this big illusion to make the government look to the public to look like they're doing something.
For Byron, he says music genres such as drill and grime, as well as the culture they create, are what's really to blame for the knife crime epidemic.
When you look into what they're listening to and who they're following, they're all rapping the same, talking the same, acting the same, and it all comes from music. When we're on about banning zombie swords and that, I'm just like, this is totally wrong because kids will just pick up another knife. The actual problem is that when these kids have been brainwashed so much, this is how they're living their life.
At Blackburn Royal Hospital, they treat young knife crime victims on a regular basis. They even have specialist members of staff who work with them to help get their lives back on track.
So we had a young adult who came through our A&E department and he had been the victim of a machete attack and he had a fractured skull. So we sat with him in the department. After he was discharged, we stayed in contact. I went to all of his hospital appointments with him, worked with him with housing because he was put in emergency housing for his own safety. Took him a food parcel one day. You know, there's nothing that we won't do. We're there to support that patient, really.
Going forward, it's hoped that this new law will reduce the number of knife crime victims treated by our hospitals and the number of families like Byron's who have to grieve the loss of a loved one. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
So sad, but will it make a darn bit of difference? And how many people who are caught in the possession of a zombie knife actually face a jail term? I doubt if it's very many. We're going to go now to Ken Hines, friend of this programme, knife crime campaigner. Ken, what do you think today? The ban is here. Will you feel safer as a result?
No, Eamonn. I'm sorry to say that this is just dressing up. You know, it's not going to make a slight bit of difference on the impact on the situation with knife crime. My thing is simply this: is that we've got to stop having these sound bites and start looking to see what we can do to increase the emotional well-being, raising young people's self-esteem. Because if you've got high self-esteem, you're not going to allow yourself to get caught up in the sort of violence. My thing is not the knife that's the problem, it's the mentality of the person who's holding the knife. And so the people who have one of the most effective influence over young people are schools. But many schools are burying their heads in the sand, like saying they don't have a problem and they won't work with people like myself to address this situation.
What would you do, Ken, from today, instead of a zombie knife ban, what would you be proposing?
I would be proposing, looking at a wider thing. I would be, as I said, working with schools. There's a person called Farron Paul of Faz Amnesty who's been doing amazing work for many years. So I'd be linking up with people like himself and asking him what we can best do. Also, along with groups like Street Fathers, who are out there on the ground, that's actually engaged with the young people, making them feel safe. Just dressing it up by trying to arrest your way out of this is not going to have any difference on it. We've got to address what young people are saying to me, that they don't feel safe on the street. That's why they're carrying knives. And the other thing is that if you're under 18 and you get caught with a knife, you're not getting a strong enough sanction. We've got to have strong enough deterrence to stop young people, because they're getting younger who are carrying these knives and who are dying from their knives.
Yeah.
We've got to let young people... Sorry.
Ken, I'm just reading about the case of a 15-year-old in Woolwich on Sunday night who was killed from a zombie knife at 6:30 in the evening. His last words to a total stranger in the street who ran out from her house, wrapped him in a sheet to try and stem the flow of blooding. He said, "I'm 15, don't let me die." She held him in her arms and said, "I'm not going to let you die, mate." He was dead before the ambulance arrived. These are children.
Oh, it's shocking. And my deepest sympathy goes out to their parents and those affected by such things. But my thing is simply this. You see, when the young people hear this, they're going to say, I much prefer to have the victim's mother crying rather than my mother crying. When it's both sets of mother and the wider community that is traumatized by these sort of events. We need to be serious about tackling it and stop bringing politics into this. Young people are dying at an alarming rate, and it needs to stop. I'm out there, we're on patrol somewhere in Enfield today. So if you're out there, come along and talk to the Street Fathers, hear what we're doing, see the solution, see how we engage with young people and help change their mindset.
Ken, thank you very much indeed. Ken is a knife crime campaigner. Thank you. The time, 27 minutes past 8, still to come. Up next, Paul Coit with the sport.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays of roughly 3/4 of an hour continue heading east towards Edinburgh along the M8 this morning following a collision that's now been moved onto the hard shoulder just west of the M9 interchange. And in South Yorkshire, the A633 Warrenvale closed south of Swinton off the junction with Rockingham Road at the scene of an accident. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, one lane's closed clockwise from junction 11 to 12 heading towards the M62, the Eccles interchange at the scene of an accident. Queues back to the Trafford Centre turn off junction 10. In Bedfordshire, the A421 is closed south of Bedford because of flooding. In Oxfordshire, north of Oxford, the A44 shut in Begbrook and Yarnton because of flooding. And on public transport, there are severe delays on the Elizabeth line in London, Shenfield to Gidea Park because of problems with the signals. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan.
GB News royalty with
your perfect start to the weekend.
Lucky us.
Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Got Paul, he's got the sport. What have you got, my friend?
Well, I like the Ian Wright story. Ian Wright has branded Erling Haaland of Manchester City a coward after throwing the ball at Gabriel's head after they scored the equaliser at the end of the game.
The thing is, I'd be careful about calling Haaland a coward. He's a big guy.
He's a Viking.
He is a big guy, isn't he?
He's a big guy. He's formidable looking.
Yeah, well, I mean, gives it a bit of this as well.
If he threw the ball and hit me in the head, I'd turn around, ready to thump him, and then say...
Sorry, mate.
Yeah. You'd look round, you go, who was it that threw that? You'd see him standing there, and you go, thank you very much. That was a very good shot, that, Erling. Anyway, this is Erling Haaland after the game. He had a go at everybody because the dark arts that Arsenal were involved in, all the rolling around on the floor, trying to waste time, drives me. But you don't feel too bad. You don't mind that, though, do you?
I like the theatre of it.
You like the theatre, but it's just like, come on. Well, if someone goes down like a sack of potatoes...
Yeah, but it gives us something to argue about. It gives us something to talk about, doesn't it, after the game's over?
Exactly. Well, Erling had a lot to say about it. First, he goes to Arteta, Captain Black, and says to him, you know, about the Mr-Ons and there's problems with those and, and how to deal with that. And then it has a go at other players. Look, have a look at this. This was after the game. He was. Yes.
Blasphemy.
I know. He's looking for trouble. He'd come to the right place. He's looking for trouble just right on his face. Ball standing up and talking back. Daddy was a green-eyed mountain Jack. Well, I'm Erling Haaland. Anyway. Rodri, who also plays for Manchester City, although won't be playing for the rest of the season by the look of it.
Well, he will be a big loss. He's some player.
He's an amazing player. Second, when it comes to Premier League, winning the ball back, he's second in that. He's the top when it comes to successful passes in the other half. Went off in the game, but it looks like an ACL injury. And for the whole season, to lose Rodri for the whole season is a huge blow to Manchester City. It's not confirmed yet, but it's a serious injury, so it looks like it's trouble. Right, a little bit of... should we do a little bit of pole climbing?
Let's do some pole climbing.
Pole climbing, another one of
What do you mean? Pole climbing's an actual sport?
Well, yeah, of course, it's the future of sport, my friend.
Not pole vaulting?
Not pole vaulting. Climbing up a pole.
Climbing the greasy pole.
Climbing, although it's not greasy, apparently.
OK, well, that makes it easier.
Is it? Right. It's not an analogy.
I don't know about this. I don't know about this sport.
Right, let's have a look.
Alcester, 25-metre pole. Now, look at them. There they go, climbing up there. It's like a lumberjack kind of thing.
Is that with a rope?
Yeah.
Is that a rope or is that a hook?
It's like they've got spikes in the shoes.
OK, well,
so you pretty much run up the pole and then you hold the ropey thing around the outside. I'm sure they do this in like the lumberjack.
They do this in like the Amazon, though. This is what people do to climb trees in the Amazon using a rope. I've seen it on Ben Fogle.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So the world record, 8.8 seconds to go up 25 metres. Lewis Bennett won the final, 9.9 seconds. There we are.
All righty.
I'd love to have a go at that. Looks
Me
quite
too.
easy, actually.
Give that a go.
Just the going down, I'm not really too happy about.
Good. OK, well, that's our greasy pole done for the morning. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Paul. Appreciate it.
Still to come, Brits hate talking about their feelings. We'll be discussing that whether you like it or not after this.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are non-crime hate incidents a breach of your human rights?
It's crazy, isn't it? Freedom of speech is now on life support here, and we've had, in the last week alone, we've had Elon Musk being threatened. He's now out of Brazil with X. We've had the founder of Telegram basically being arrested, and he's been charged in France. We're not quite sure the circumstances why he was there, whether Macron invited him to the Olympics or whatever, but he's been arrested under several charges. And we've had all sorts of people who've been speaking out are basically being shut down. So it has to be freedom of thought. It has to be freedom of expression. It's one of our fundamental rights under the Human Rights Act of 1998. Article 10 gives you the right to express your opinion and also to air that publicly.
It's basically I say something that somebody doesn't like, so probably one of my monologues. Then somebody can then inform the police that I've upset them in some way. And then that goes on my record, so I now have a criminal record. Yes. Because somebody else who I've never met, who's never met me, has heard something that upset or hurt your feelings. Then if I go for a certain job or I go for my DBS check, which I do regularly because I go and talk in schools, somebody could pull that up and go, well, you did something that had hurty feelings, and so now you can't have that job. That has got to be a breach of my human rights.
Oh, it's absolutely. Article 10, it's a fundamental right to protect your freedom of speech and so on and so forth. And this is what's really worrying, because it's happening around the world, as I say, in Brazil, in France, in various other countries. In America, you know, Zuckerberg, he came out in the last few days and said the pressure that he was put under by the Biden administration, first of all about COVID, and even jokes he was told to suppress them. The other thing that he was saying about the Hunter Biden laptop. And he said he couldn't speak about that because they were telling him not to. And what he did, he had to fact check, and he turned around and said he regretted that, because the reality is you're working on that sort of basis.
GB News, the People's Channel.
The Britain I grew up was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth. Available at gbnews.com.
Welcome back. 8:37 is the time. We're going through the papers in the company of Claire Muldoon and Theo Usherwood this morning. And Theo, I want to start with a story deep inside the Daily Mail, it has to be said, about the postmaster scandal, still ongoing with this tech glitch, I suppose, if you want to call it that, even though we've all learned and heard so much about the implications for their lives.
The mind boggles as to why this is still an issue, but YouGov has done a survey of more than 1,000 sub-postmasters, and it's found that 7 in 10 are still experiencing problems. And they describe it as an unexplained discrepancy in the accounting system since January 2020. And of course, that's years after the faults in the software first came to light as part of Fujitsu's Horizon scandal. Of course, we had sub-postmasters being bankrupted, we had them being sent to prison, their suicides, lives completely devastated, ruined.
People dying before they were ever
receiving justice. And all the time they were saying there's something wrong with this software and it's leading to these accounting discrepancies, and yet the Post Office ploughed on with prosecutions, knowing full well, and we've heard this in the inquiry, of the issues. And it just, I don't understand what needs to happen to stop this.
I wonder if they're still using Fujitsu as the software developer for the post office systems now, actually. And I wonder if the newer ones are actually I wonder if the newer ones are much better than the old ones that caused all of this problems. Well,
I mean, this survey is describing faults in Fujitsu's Horizon software. So I just don't. It just needs to be resolved, And it
but
doesn't.
how to resolve it? Because my understanding is that Horizon kind of dominate the market, if you like, for this kind of technology. There isn't really another system that they can switch to, and so these people are being left in this situation where, you know, they're obviously very concerned that not only is there, you know, these discrepancies, but whether or not that might have implications on their life as well. Absolutely agree. It needs to be dealt with. On a lighter note, deep inside the sun, they've taken a slightly different tone.
Do you really have to say deep inside there?
Oh, stop.
Because yesterday you were talking about aphrodisiacs, and I just... Well, apparently.
Was I?
And I just feel that... So there's now new superfoods. We were all brought up in the, you know, the noughties of the superfoods, the superberries, to give you antioxidants and do everything else. And sadly then there was something lacking in people's lives. I couldn't tell you what it was, because it's got nothing to do with me.
Oh, but apparently yesterday we were talking about bacon.
Yes.
Making you saucy.
Yes.
That's the new aphrodisiac.
That's, yeah.
Okay.
So it's not actually.
Oh.
Because you've got beetroot. You can't beat bacon. Get beetroot boost. Sniff an armpit.
Sniff an armpit?
Sniff an armpit.
I think there's science in that.
There is.
I think men release, is it
pheromones? Pheromones.
And, yes, if it's not intensely gross,
apparently
sweat, that can be quite...
Swig a Shiraz. I don't like Shiraz. I much prefer a Malbec. Eat your oats. Unless the porridge man and
oats are supposed to make you crispy.
Yes. Well, look at the Scots porridge oats cartons. Remember, there was always a handsome man in a kilt.
Clad man.
Yes, they might have to have the use of the Hamza Yusuf tartan on them now, eh? Let's go for that. Eau de garage. You don't necessarily need to splash out on the most expensive cologne or aftershave to get yourself noticed, says the Sun. All sorts of everyday aromas have been found to set women off. Petrol, paint,
I do like the smell of petrol, but
I do like the smell of petrol. It doesn't.
Yeah, I like bacon. I
might have to turn the car on, but I don't think it turns me on.
Beetroot, but none of these things. I like oats.
Strawberries are all the good ones.
Strawberries?
Yes, and tucking into a takeaway.
Does it say any particular takeaway? Or just a takeaway?
Well, they've got fish and chips here, but a full English breakfast that makes us saucy. Oh, my goodness me.
No. I mean, there's actual science in the oysters releasing...
And asparagus as well, isn't there? I think there's supposed to be science in that one as well.
OK, we're going with the science this morning.
All of our viewers that are tucking into the breakfast this morning, make sure it's full of oats and, you know, lots of other strawberries and lots of other things. Don't be hitting the Shiraz just quite yet.
OK, Theo, let's turn to this story about Greggs. Locals are revolting over an invasion. Where is this? Because we hear about people in Cornwall not liking it, and now it's, what, Norfolk?
It's in the posh bit of Norfolk.
Posh part of town, where the royals hail from.
Swaffham in Norfolk. Greggs is a Georgian market town. Of course, it's near Sandringham, where the royal family have a residence. And there's a local baker's. It's called Well-Bred Bakers. It's been a family bakery that's been in the town for the last 40 years. And the residents, locals, are fearing that with Greggs coming in, that this baker's, which of course, you know, all these shops, you know, they operate on small margins. They're going to be, you know, they're going to lose their, they're going to lose a key part of their clientele because they're going to go off to Greggs. And there's a feeling the petition's been launched to try and stop Greggs from opening up. I've got to say, I think the residents of Swaffham, the easiest way to sort this out is just don't go to Greggs. If you if you want to support your local well-bred bakers, then don't go to Greggs.
But there is a Norfolk, and so the residents might not like it, but the tourists might, because it's affordable, it's expensive, it's pricey to go all day to Norfolk.
And Greggs is a really good cheap option, but speak. You know, do we need a petition, or can we just speak with our wallets?
Yeah, vote with our feet.
Yes, and just go to.
Was there a place in Hastings that didn't want a Gales bakery or something?
Yeah.
So it's an equal measure. You know, we don't want the Greggs, we don't want the Gales.
We just want the indies.
We just want the indies. So vote independent. Open up your own if you don't want it.
Not everyone can.
Well, true. But, you know, as you say, vote with your wallet and your feet.
This links into the next story in a way. The great British stiff upper lip is still a part of life, because I love how politely they're compiling what was it? The team were putting together. What do you when you sign it? Sorry.
Petition.
A petition.
Yes.
Word, the very word. Yeah, so British, to sign a petition to stop a Greggs invading. Anyway, tell me the story in much more eloquent terms, Claire, in the Daily Star today.
Well, the Daily Star, a right rivet and read, they're saying that the stiff upper Brit is still on key. We are not talking about our feelings. We're not talking about how we are feeling, our mental fitness. Quite right, I say. Thank goodness we're not. Because, you know, why do I need to know what's wrong with you? If I ask you how you are, unless you're a mate, a good mate, then I'm not going to be that involved.
I think traditionally, even with our friends, we've been really bad as a nation at talking about this. And I think one of the big developments of the last 20 years or so is that people now recognise, perhaps in a way that they didn't used to. I'm not advocating everyone being snowflakes, but I do think that we need to talk about how we're feeling. Because look at the suicides in men in particular.
But that's not stopping the suicides, though. As much as everyone is talking about it, it's not stopping them.
So I think it's important, isn't it, that if you can find a way without. And it's hard because I think we can live lives in our phones. We can live quite isolated lives where we're not necessarily talking to our friends or picking up the phone. We can, you know, we don't necessarily speak on the phone as we used to speak on the phone or speak in person as we used to, because of course everything's done through apps like WhatsApp or Messenger or whatever it is. So I think if you can, you know, I understand, of course, you know, that some people think, oh no, do I have to? Do I really want to talk this through? But I think if you can be there for a friend or a friend, you can share a problem, then a problem.
And I'm often the first person that people will come to because I'm quite pragmatic and I'm strong and I'll tell them like it is. They might not like it, but they get told. But interestingly, it was Interflora that commissioned this report. So Interflora, I think, are thinking, well, if you can't articulate it, send it.
Yeah, I think that's important. I'll go with that if you can't talk about it.
Yes.
Right, let's talk about this, shall we, Theo? More than half of Gen Zers don't want to be middle managers. This is called, and they're dubbing it in the Mail, conscious unbossing. I suppose it's the kind of position where
it follows on from quiet quitting, doesn't it? We've got these 20-somethings, and I hope I've got that right with Gen Zers. You know, they come into the workplace and rather than kind of going for that first promotion to middle management, where they get to sign off holiday, deal with sick leave, fill in the rota.
You make it sound so avant-garde and glamorous.
But rather than doing that, they're saying, actually, they're all for the quiet life, the lack of stress. Why bother? And they're not going for that promotion. And I was saying, I've got a little bit of sympathy for the Gen Zers, because middle management, I think, can be a fairly thankless task, because you're dealing with what the senior managers want and then all of the problems of those underneath you.
I think being an entry-level employee is pretty thankless. You know, those were probably the hardest and worst years of my career in my 20s.
It's a rite of passage.
Well, you can go through it.
I did middle management for 11 months. Never again. Never again.
I've never been.
I was hopeless.
You need to bring in the stiff upper lip, Theo. That would have helped.
Stop talking about your feelings.
Exactly.
I was not. No,
11 months. By that time you knew it wasn't right. But these guys need to face reality. They need to be brought back into the workplace. They need to
I completely agree. I agree with you on that.
They're not being mentored. They're not developing social skills
100%.
that have perhaps been lost.
Yes.
You know, and we need to bring them back.
And I think if you do that, and you bring people into the company, bring them into the culture that you're trying to foster within your particular organisation, you're going to get better results, and you're going to get a better morale within your workforce. Of course, and then they are going to you will inevitably get people who want to kick on
to be with other people.
And get into.
No man is an island.
Yeah. Fair enough. Let's talk about Moira Stewart, well-known BBC News legend and now classic FM presenter. She's been victim to a sophisticated bank scam.
Hugely sophisticated bank scam, and I was keen to showcase this. I know, I was keen to showcase this story today that's covered extensively in the Times and indeed on BBC Online. And a lot of our viewers will be sitting there thinking, gosh, we could be the archetypal person that would be pinpointed by scammers. And if they look to someone like Moira Stewart, who's been on our TV screens for decades, who is articulate, who's a very intelligent woman, if it happened to her, it can happen to anyone. Yeah. It's just really awful. The level and the you know, the audacity of the scammers, and they're so clever. They're so clever.
And she was ex-directory, and therefore she thought that she couldn't, because obviously she was the news, because she was ex-directory, she thought she couldn't be targeted by these scammers, and yet they still managed to get her phone number, ring her up, sell her the scam. And I think it goes. She doesn't mention the branch of her bank in this, but fair play to the local customer service person who dealt with her and helped her, because realising that something was off, immediately intervened and supported her.
Isn't that a wonderful thing that the other banks should be looking at, that we need banks back in the high street?
Because would that have been stopped on her?
She didn't lose her fortune.
She didn't lose her fortune, but it was because somebody stepped in and it was at her branch. It wasn't a call centre a million miles away. She'd gone to her branch and found out because somebody had intervened and said, hang on a moment, this just smells off.
The other point to bear in mind is it's not just the elderly that that can fall prey to these scammers. The young people, my own niece got scammed from one of her bank accounts, and it was so easy, so highly focused, so nuanced, so personal, and so easy to fall victim.
Well, my cousin had identity theft. Her entire identity was copied, and it was to do with passwords and not changing them and using the same passwords for different things, which we all do, let's be honest, because it's too hard to remember them all. All it takes is one person to take the time to work it out, and they can kind of steal who you are, and it took months, and it affected her credit rating, affected all sorts of things.
Well, it happens. That does happen.
People's lives.
It does. And if anyone wants to clone me, they're welcome. They can steal my identity.
And we'll have theirs. Could work. If they're doing well from fraud, it might be just the thing. Can we talk about Worcestershire sauce, Claire?
Yes.
Because all may not be as it appears.
I didn't know there were two types. When I have a Bloody Mary, all I want's the Lean Perrins, the celery, and the nice spicy hit. I didn't know there was a thing called Henderson's relish. Did you?
No.
Well, it rings a bell, but...
Well, this is what all of this is about. A bit of storm and a Bloody Mary. It's not Bloody Mary, actually. But people are turning the Henderson relish bottles around in supermarkets because they've now branded it Worcestershire, and all the people from Sheffield are up in arms because they think it's the best thing since sliced bread. And that's the whole story. It's really quite bizarre.
So it's just so I get this right, Claire. This is Worcestershire sauce. It's not made in Worcester. It's not from Worcestershire. It's made in Sheffield.
It's made in Sheffield. Bit of cultural appropriation, as the Gen Zers would say.
But places get very funny. I remember covering. There was
pork pie, aren't you?
I was going to Melton Mowbray pork pie or Stilton cheese, and people get very protective of.
Well, wasn't that EU law that meant that they were regional
it's the same as
It's a Brexit freedom now that they've been able to.
It's a Brexit. It's a benefit of Brexit.
Well, tell Worcestershire it's a benefit. They'll be very annoyed.
They'll be annoyed.
Good stuff. OK, we're going to squeeze in one more story. We've only got a minute 30, but it leads on to the next half hour of the programme, and we've got two big interviews. And Theo, this is the story about the nurses yesterday voting against the 5.5% pay rise offer from the government, above inflation, they were saying. But Victoria Atkins, who we're going to have on in around 20 minutes' time, was saying, well, this was inevitable. If you're going to give a huge, whopping, great 22.3 or whatever it is over 2 years to junior doctors, everyone who's hard-working in the public sector is going to come back asking for more.
Yes, and this the point, I think, is that actually when you look at the nursing profession in this country, economically, if you're thinking about what profession you are going to go into, nursing, it just doesn't make sense in terms of the rewards you're going to get. I mean, OK, people do these things because it's a vocation, but you know, you get a £5,000 grant, you're paying fees then of up to £30,000 to earn an average of just over £30,000 over the course of your career, and now the government has turned around and given you just a 5.5% pay rise. And you'd say fine, but compare that to 14%, 14.5% for the trained drivers, 22% for the junior doctors, and it is hard work being a nurse. You're working 12-hour shifts, whether it's nights, then daytime, it's back-to-back, it's tough.
And the retention as well.
Yeah, well, lots of them leaving. You've got to leave now. Theo and Claire, thanks very much for taking us through the papers this morning. Stay tuned, our way more for you after 9, but here's Aidan with your forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Following the very heavy rain that we've seen across some central and southern parts of the UK over the last few days, today is brighter and drier in the south. Still some showers around, but this time it's the turn of the north, specifically northern and eastern Scotland, where we'll see some wet weather during the next few hours. Persistent and at times heavy outbreaks of rain. Scattered showers for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, much of northern and central England as well as Wales, mostly dry to the south. Some areas of cloud around, but also a few glimmers of sunshine, so certainly drier and brighter compared with yesterday. Highs of 18 Celsius in the south. Colder further north, with a bit of a northerly wind setting in across Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England. And the showers tending to break up a lot more into the evening. Some late brightness arriving into the north of Scotland before the sun goes down. Likewise for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, a few gaps in the clouds, but plenty of showers around. And for northern and central England, parts of Wales, again, a few showers, but also some clear spells. Mostly dry for East Anglia and southern counties of England, after we've seen so much rain during the last few days. Heading into the evening, clearing skies for many, but there will be some areas of cloud floating about for the central belt into southern Scotland, parts of northern England. Some showers keep going here, likewise for northern Scotland. Where we've got the clear skies elsewhere, though, it's going to be a cool night with temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in the north, mild in the far south as it starts to turn cloudy for the start of Wednesday, and this area of rain begins to move in. Now, that's going to turn things wet by the afternoon across parts of the south and southwest, as well as eventually Northern Ireland. But ahead of that, some brightness remains across Scotland, northern and eastern England. Just some showers around, but it's again cold in the north, milder further south, and then very unsettled into Thursday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Johnny Ratner. There are long residual delays on the clockwise carriageway of the M60 through Greater Manchester after an accident involving multiple vehicles just south of the Eccles interchange off the M62. All lanes have been reopened, but it's still queuing back to Junction 7 at Carrington. And in Bedfordshire, just south of Bedford, the A421 closed because of flooding off the M1. In Cambridgeshire, we're just hearing the High Street at Harston is also blocked because of an accident. On the western stretch of the M25, the two outside lanes are closed clockwise just south of the M40 after a van broke down long queues back to the Staines bypass. Wiltshire west of Calne, the A4 blocked by flooding on public transport. The Elizabeth line is suffering with severe delays through East London from Shenfield to Gideon Park because of signalling problems, and Thameslink can't run by Greenwich, London Bridge to Dartford due to a points failure down in Kent. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's an incredible good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Sir Keir Starmer is preparing to give his first conference speech as Prime Minister.
What will he say? The Labour leader will promise light at the end of the tunnel. After Rachel Reeves, Chancellor, yesterday said there'll be no return to austerity.
So it will be a budget with real ambition, a budget to fix the foundations, a budget to deliver the change that we promised, a budget to rebuild Britain.
And with that £22 billion black hole in public spending, the Prime Minister will pledge a crackdown on benefit fraudsters.
In a few moments, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, that's Pat McFadden, will be joining us ahead of Starmer's big speech.
And a blow to the government. Nurses rejected a 5.5% pay rise offer. The Shadow Health Secretary Victoria Atkins will be with us in the next half hour to discuss that.
From today, it becomes illegal to own zombie knives or machetes. GB News talks to a campaigner who worries it doesn't go far enough.
It's an absolute waste of time because zombie swords are just a part of the fashion. Zombie swords aren't, or machetes aren't brainwashing kids. That's not the problem. That's not the root cause. It's just like this big illusion to make the government look to the public to look like they're doing something.
During the past few days, we've seen some electrifying thunderstorms and torrential outbreaks of rain. Will today be any quieter for southern parts of the UK? Has the rain shifted further north? I'll have the full details in the forecast coming up shortly.
Hello there, after 9 o'clock here on this Tuesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and you're tuned in to GB News Breakfast.
Let's now go to the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, and there we have...
We have the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden. Good morning, good to see you. We're going to be hearing lots of positivity, I believe, late-night amendments to the Prime Minister's speech, because it's a different tone that we've been hearing for the last 11 weeks or so.
Well, it's a story in two parts. It's important that we talk about the inheritance that we had. If I recall, I think the Tories were talking about their inheritance from the last Labour government for 10 years or so. So I think we're entitled to mention it in the first 10 weeks of our period in office, because it's a serious point. No government gets to choose the circumstances that it governs in. You have to start from what you inherit from the previous regime, and we've inherited some serious difficulties. And not to point that out would be a lack of candour with the public about some of the decisions that we have to take. But that's only half the story. The important point is, if we can sort these things out with a new government, it's got a stable majority for the next 5 years, we get the public finances back on an even keel, then the prospects for the country are great. Britain's a great place in which to invest, and if we can get that message out and get that going, then we can generate the wealth that we need to make people better off and to fund the public services that we all depend on. And the two parts to that story are going to be at the heart of the Prime Minister's speech this afternoon.
So what is the light at the end of the tunnel that he's going to be talking about?
Well, I think there's probably three key elements to it, Eamonn. The first is to improve people's living standards, because they've been through a really tough cost of living crisis in the past few years. The second thing, which you'd expect to be close to the Labour Party's heart, is to turn the NHS around. That's what we did when we were last in government. We'll do it again. And the third point is around this point about investment. It's to rebuild the country, get the house building going, get the data labs built, get the energy transition investment in to really get going and rebuilding the country. And if we can do those things, then I think it will be good for the country, and it will be good prospects for the United Kingdom.
A few things to pick up on there. You talk about it would be a lack of candour not to talk about the inheritance that you got from the previous government. Why isn't the Treasury publishing these figures that relate to this alleged black hole? A lot of people would say there's a huge gap in public finances because you're giving these huge inflation-busting pay rises to train drivers who are already on £60,000 to £70,000. And, you know, you've just been given £10 billion in breathing space, head space, if you want to call it that, from the Bank of England. You don't need to press ahead. You talk about improving living standards. Why are you going after pensioners? Do they not count when you're talking about trying to make people's lives better?
Well, you talk about the public finances there. If you look at the debt figures that were published a few days ago, they underline the point that we've been making. Higher than expected, higher than the OBR were forecasting when the budget was made in March. And that shows you the point that we've been making for the last few months, that the public finances are in a more difficult position than the Tories led us to believe, because they announced a load of things and didn't put any funding in place to pay for them. We've been left to pick up the pieces for that. Some of the decisions that we have to make are not ones that we would have wanted to make, but we do have a duty to sort out the public finances. And that's what the Chancellor has to do in the run-up to this budget in about a month's time.
But you see,
when
Pat,
we've done that, the prospects for the country are good.
Pat, a lot of people still, bear in mind what you've said there, a lot of people still couldn't see the Conservatives, if they had have won the election and been in power, cutting the winter fuel allowance for pensioners.
Well, they campaigned in the election for £12 billion of cuts in the welfare budget. Now, I don't know exactly where it was going to fall, but that was a big part of their manifesto. They also campaigned for more tax cuts as well, and they had announced all these things that they said they were going to fund. They actually set the remit for the public sector pay review bodies that reported that, when we came into office. In fact, in the case of education, they'd already had the report on the Secretary of State's desk and chose not to share it with the public. So I don't know what they were going to do if they were going to win, but I do know one thing: the money wasn't there for all the things that they promised.
Conservatives, obviously for a Labour Party to be pursuing this, it does certainly raise eyebrows, not least from the 5 major unions who would probably have embarrassed the Prime Minister if their vote had been able to be scheduled and if he'd have found time for that yesterday. It's interesting, the Chancellor saying that she won't duck difficult decisions. She's happy to be tough on other people, but perhaps not on yourselves. I mean, here we have Starmer, the man of the people. He's already paid off his £2 million mortgage, according to the papers this morning, but living a life of freebies and luxury. How about some of those tough decisions of turning down some of those freebies? And why don't you introduce MPs means testing for those that can afford all of their expenses themselves, rather than means testing pensioners and OAPs?
I'm not sure what you mean by MPs means testing, but maybe you can come back and explain
expenses. You could means test
question
those, couldn't you?
to me.
You've got wealthy people like Keir Starmer, who's paid off his £2 million mortgage. He doesn't need to be claiming expenses, does he, at our expense?
Maybe they'll take your idea away and look at that. I haven't heard that suggestion before. But look, on this, he has declared everything properly in line with the rules. I think some of this is about, in the run-up to the campaign, getting help from a donor who is well-meant, who wants to help the Prime Minister and his wife in the run-up to the campaign. It's all been properly declared, but we turn a page now. We're in government now, and we go forward from here.
Talk about pubs. There's reports at the front of the Telegraph this morning talking about possibly forcing early closure of these in what they describe as a fresh nanny state blow, because of course there's lots of talk about trying to ban outdoor smoking as well. Can you tell us any more about that?
I was asked about this in a couple of earlier interviews this morning. I said I might be joining those 5 trade unions that you mentioned and put down a resolution about it. I don't think the story's true. I'm not quite sure where it's come from, but we've no plans to change the pub opening hours.
So you joined the unions on objecting to that, but not on the winter fuel payments. Walked into that one, didn't you?
Well, look, I've been around these conferences for a long time. I've seen these resolutions before. Obviously, we always want to listen to the party members, but when it comes to a budget, it's the Labour Chancellor that has to write the budget.
Fair enough. OK, Pat McFadden, good to talk to you. I always forget your title. It's quite a mouthful. Maybe you could tell us what it actually even means. Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. What does that mean your role is?
It goes back some hundreds of years, so we could be here all morning, but what it really means is the Secretary of State for the Cabinet Office.
Got it. Love it.
Good man, Pat.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pat. Cheers. Still plenty of time to grab your part of our Great British giveaway, which would be £36,000. It's a lot of dosh, and it could be yours. Have a go. Good luck indeed if you're having a go.
Yes, we're going to be talking to the Shadow Health Secretary in a few moments' time, Victoria Atkins. I have an idea. She'll have lots to say about the nurse negotiations and their...
Yeah, she's going to say why she didn't give them their money.
Probably, yeah, we can
there's
ask
no point
her
complaining about it now.
We've been talking this morning about tracking our adult children, whether that is controlling or caring. It's kind of divided opinion.
It's just freaky.
Yeah, you think it's weird. Lots of people saying they track their elderly parents.
I can see that. If you're talking about the vulnerable, meaning young children or old people, yes, or pets or whatever.
I suppose there's some people that say in some worlds this is described as stalking. But I think there's an assumption where it comes to that sort of contract between parent and child. It's usually just love, isn't it? So I don't have a problem with it. But anyway, loads of you were getting in touch. When my daughter was at uni, nearly every night out ended with a lost phone. Next morning, she would contact me to trace it, says Lee. Rita says, I'm 78. My daughter tags me. I think it's a great idea. And Bill says, all this tracking sounds great till people start tracking their exes. We can switch it off. You have to accept it.
Yeah, but what if you forgot you had it switched on in the first place?
Well, it's your own fault for being so forgetful. That's what I say. Okay. We'll be back in a minute.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Did you know several Paralympic GB track and field athletes are aiming to go for gold this summer in Paris? So aside from pure talent, a British firm has incorporated, get this, space technology in the materials of running clothes to help athletes perform at their ultimate capacity. I'm not sure if I believe this, but we'll find out in a sec. Trailblazing scientists, engineers and designers at British firm Rheon Labs have taken an idea first used in a NASA project, and they've now developed it for over 15 years at Imperial College in London.
First of all, please can you explain to us a bit more about how and what this incredible technology is?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, our founder, Dr. Dan Plant, spent many years developing these kind of dynamic materials. That means they behave in what's called non-Newtonic way. So they don't follow the rules. Effectively, they can change their behavior depending on kind of stress or stretch you apply to it. So what you get on an athlete level, if you imagine you have a garment, it's supercharged. It's such that the garment changes its support depending on your movement or your activity or the speed at which you run.
So you're saying that it generates, what, more sort of kinetic energy, is that right?
Not quite. It makes you effectively make more out of your own energy. Spot the athletes with the wavy curves and stripes, you'll see that. So that's super polymer we have in combination with these stripes that are kind of built around the way your muscles moves.
You said the difference between first and fourth place is a fraction of a percent.
Yeah, that's the very main difference it makes. So even if you manage to kind of make more of your own energy and improve your performance by 1%, that's the difference between podium and non-podium.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. We are joined this morning by the Shadow Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Victoria Atkins. Good morning to you. Let's get straight in, shall we, to this nursing row. They've rejected this 5.5% pay offer from the government. Your thoughts on that? Because I think you've described it as entirely foreseeable.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Yes, in the last 12 weeks, what we have seen is that this Labour government has lost control of the public sector pay process. And the reason I said it was entirely foreseeable was that as Secretary of State for Health, I was responsible for reaching a settlement with consultants who were on strike, you may remember, a year ago. I reached a settlement with specialty doctors as well. And the third group that I was trying to reach agreement with was junior doctors. But the advice that I had from officials was very clear that in all of these negotiations, I had to bear in mind the ramifications for the rest of the healthcare service and healthcare professionals. And so that is why I wasn't prepared to make the sorts of inflation-busting pay rises that Mr. Streeting made a couple of weeks after winning the general election, because I was relying and acting on the advice of officials that it would have impacts on other healthcare professionals, including nurses and midwives, who would ask quite reasonably, well, what value does this government put on us? And we are now seeing the longer-term consequences of that short-term decision he made in July to award that inflation-busting pay rise to junior doctors with no reform, such as I had with consultants, no improvements to productivity, and sadly, we're now seeing the ramifications of that.
Well, the ramifications just solely with nurses is what we're talking about. We've got everything else settled.
Yeah. Well, of course, it will have an impact across healthcare. So the Royal College of Nursing is a part of what's called the Agenda for Change group of trade unions. The RCN have issued their letter. I don't know what other unions have said, but the whole point of these negotiations is that this is, negotiating pay across such a vast and complex organisation like the NHS is not a matter of simply rolling up your sleeves and getting round the table, as Labour politicians will have come on this programme and claimed. It's much more difficult and complex than that, and it's a constant balancing act between, of course, wishing to look after our staff properly and fairly, but also being reasonable to other members of staff and, of course, to the taxpayer, who, after all, is that we are the people that are paying for this. And so it is the duty of government to ensure that as part of these negotiations, we should be getting reforms, productivity improvements and so on, and that, sadly, is something that the Health Secretary failed to do in these
Victoria,
negotiations.
it's also your duty to have a sustainable health service, and a health service in which people are proud to work in, and to put a value on the job of a nurse and what they do. And without a proper pay settlement, you're not doing that. You're not valuing these people.
Exactly right. And what we're seeing, I worked incredibly closely with the Royal College as Secretary of State because I was determined to ensure that they felt valued. And for me, it's not just about the pay, it's also working conditions. So earlier this year, I introduced with NHS England improvements to working conditions for junior doctors, and I was in the process of improving working conditions for other healthcare professionals, including, of course, nurses and midwives. That, to me, is an absolute part of this. And there has to be a strategy. Only 9 months ago, Mr. Streeting, in opposition, was saying, when we were talking about the deal that we had reached with consultants, he said that I had got it, I quote, completely wrong, and the deal I had settled was a slap in the face for nurses, his words. I wonder now whether he's regretting those words, because 9 months on, it seems he has done exactly as he tried to criticise me for doing earlier in the year when he was in opposition. But what is important is that he has not secured those productivity reforms that are so essential to, as you rightly say, a sustainable health service.
I want to ask you about the budget, which is staring at us coming down the track in the not-too-distant future. There are some concerns that actually, in the immediate aftermath of the budget, it will be the Leader of the Opposition, Rishi Sunak, who will be responding to what could arguably be one of the most consequential fiscal events in recent history. Should you not bring forward the date? Should the membership not sort of speed up their process after your Conservative Party conference so that a leader, the new leader of the party, can adequately respond in a way that so far it feels as though the Conservatives, despite their best efforts, are still a little bit all over the place and stabbing each other in the back in place. We had Kemi Badenoch attacking Robert Jenrick yesterday. Everybody sort of infighting when they should be focusing on being an effective opposition.
Well, I promise you, every Conservative is focused on exactly that, and indeed that's why I'm out this morning to try to add some constructive commentary to the debate that is unfolding now in the health service as a result of the Health Secretary's decision in July. But in terms of the budget, you're quite right that people are looking at this budget with fear. We already know, if you judge a government by its actions, we already know that this government has slashed winter fuel payments for some of the most vulnerable pensioners in society in order to pay train drivers and junior doctors their inflation busting. And so the response to this will be really important. I promise you I was going to get there. The response to this is really important. I think the leadership contest is, we have to allow it to take its time, but I have absolute full confidence that Rishi Sunak, former Chancellor, former Prime Minister, who has spent his life, his career working in the city, he absolutely understands the economics that the Prime Minister... So if I may just finish on the budget, he understands the background all too well for the current Chancellor. He understands it, and so I'm absolutely confident he will be able to demolish some of these nonsensical claims that we have seen coming from this Chancellor. And here's a lesson for her. The very fact that she has been, for the last 12 weeks, talking down our economy when it is one of the fastest growing in the G7. We've seen inflation at target and raised by 0.2% since they've taken over. The very fact she has been talking down our economy has had real life impacts on business confidence. And so Rishi is going to be able, with all of his wealth of experience and knowledge, he will really be able to draw out the details on this budget. But I very much agree with your viewers that we should all be worried about this budget, because the actions of this government so far show that they are beholden to their union paymasters and their donors, and are not thinking through carefully about how to build an economy for the future from which we all benefit.
OK, Shadow Health Secretary Victoria Atkins, we have to leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We will have full coverage right across the Labour conference throughout the day here on GB News, and you can watch the Prime Minister having his say. His speech is live at 2 o'clock this afternoon. You can see that on Good Afternoon Britain.
Coming up on Britain's Newsroom, a quick 30-second preview, Bev, if you will. Good morning to you.
Good morning, both. We've got Yvette Cooper talking in our time this morning at 10 o'clock. Obviously, she has a huge remit and a huge responsibility. She's going to come out fighting about the fact that there needs to be clamp down on crime on our streets, shoplifting. Andrew is obviously there in Liverpool, so he's going to be bringing us all the action from there.
I believe Andrew is actually standing by to give us a quick flavour of what's to come. Andrew?
They're heady with excitement because it is the Prime Minister's speech today, the first speech to a Labour conference by a Prime Minister since 2009. He's going to strike a much more upbeat, optimistic tone than we've heard of late. And I suspect there'll be very little reference to freebie gate and the free clothes. But I saw him last night, I bumped into him, he seemed in very good form.
Good. OK, all right. Thank you very much, both of you. Look forward to it.
Nice jacket, Beverly.
Thanks.
Very, very nice.
Ditto.
Thought you were going to say nice jacket, Eamonn, but...
I did, ditto. Same at you, Eamonn. Yeah, lovely jacket. Nice tie.
Right, you two. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Andrew and Bev.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Following the very heavy rain that we've seen across some central and southern parts of the UK over the last few days, today is brighter and drier in the south. Still some showers around, but this time it's the turn of the north, specifically northern and eastern Scotland, where we'll see some wet weather during the next few hours. Persistent and at times heavy outbreaks of rain. Scattered showers for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, much of northern and central England as well as Wales, mostly dry to the south. Some areas of cloud around, but also a few glimmers of sunshine, so certainly drier and brighter compared with yesterday.